Hey friends, before we dive into tonight's story, did you know that nearly 80% of viewers aren't subscribed? If you're enjoying this content, hit that subscribe button. It really helps keep these long stories coming. Also, for even more police horror stories, check out my new channel. The link's in the description and pinned comment. I'd love it if you stop by and subscribe. I'd love to hear from you. What time is it where you are and which city are you listening from tonight? Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into it. I remember the crackle on the radio before anything else. Just a few bars of static that rattled through my headset and echoed in the cab of my cruiser. It was 0007 when dispatch finally cut through the white noise. Unit 42. There's an SOS from a panic button at the Valley Star gas station, mile marker 18 on State Route 5. No further details. Copy? I clicked the mic, forcing my voice steady. Copy that, 42 en route. I'd been on the force in Meridian County, Iowa, for 16 years. Long enough to finish my shift at the station, kick back a cold coffee in the break room, and still feel that itch in my gut when the call wasn't routine. A panic alarm was never routine, not at 007 on a Tuesday. I rolled across the highway under the yellow glow of a single overhead lamp, headlights cutting a wedge through the fog that clung low over the pavement like an unwanted guest. The gas station stood blinking, its pumps idle, convenience store shuttered behind locked windows. No other cars, no traffic, just the distant hum of the interstate and the quiet buzz of the neon sign above the pumps reading Valley Star, only half the letters twisted out. I parked 2 spots from pump 3, the engine ticking as it cooled. My partner, Detective Ramirez, climbed out behind me, his silhouette stiff against the haze. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, always precise. He jogged up to my driver's door, then tapped the window. I rolled it down. "Alone?" he asked. I nodded. "Looks like it." His flashlight beam swept the gravel lot. No footprints, no broken glass, no lingering scent of spilled fuel. Just the faint odor of damp asphalt and something faintly metallic. I switched off the cruiser's lights, and we stood in near darkness. We approached the sliding door in tandem, uniforms crisp under the muted glow of our torches. I radioed dispatch, 42 to dispatch, on location, checking. Static, nothing. I toggled the switch again, voice firmer. "Dispatch, 42 here." "Do you copy?" Still dead air. No backup committed, no street units, no fire. Just the silence that clung to every corner of this icy night. The door yielded with a quiet hiss, and we stepped inside. The fluorescent lights overhead blinked, flickered, then steadied into a sickly yellow glow. Shelves were neatly stocked, chips, soda, packaged sandwiches. Everything in its place, no sign of struggle. Registers locked, bags organized. "Panic buttons usually up by the counter," Ramirez said, his tone low. "Maybe someone hit it accidentally." He moved toward the front desk. I swept the perimeter, checking aisles. Each beam of light revealed too much and too little. Rows of cans and boxes standing ordered as soldiers on parade, but nothing to explain why that alarm blared. Ramirez pressed the panic button's housing, seated on the corner of the counter, a red plastic square warped by heat. He tapped it, no light. "Dead battery," he reported, stepping back. "Could have been tripped then drained." I knelt and checked the registers. Both drawers were empty. I glanced up at him. "They didn't clear it before closing?" He shrugged, gloved fingers tapping his flashlight. "Maybe someone was in here after hours." At the back, a narrow hallway led to the storage room and an office. I motioned, and we advanced, senses heightened. Outside, I thought I heard a rumble, but the flash of headlights on the window, Another patrol. A random truck. I turned the corner. Empty corridor, vinyl floors, the smell of industrial cleaner. The office door stood ajar. I drew my sidearm, thumb resting on the slide, and nudged the door with my boot. Wood creaked as it swung inward, flicking dust motes in the beam of my light. The office was small. Desk, filing cabinet, a folding chair. Papers scattered. Delivery receipts, store schedules, a quarterly inventory sheet in neat columns. On the desk, a small photo in a desk stand. 2 children smiling in front of a pumpkin patch. A faint landmark, a red barn in the background that could have been miles away or right next door. Ramirez tapped on the filing cabinet. "Anything missing?" he asked. I scanned the drawers. 3rd drawer locked. I eased it open, all files present. Nothing obvious. A sudden snap, snap, snap sounded from behind us, soft but deliberate, like fingernails tapping glass. I jerked around, light slicing across the window overlooking the pumps. Outside, I saw footsteps, 1, 2, 3, stepping closer, but no silhouette. "You hear that?" I whispered. Ramirez clicked his light off the wall and covered my blind side. We moved back into the hallway, time moving slow, every breath heavy in my lungs. I dug my radio out again. "Dispatch, do you copy?" "Dispatch." No response. Dead. Ramirez exhaled so hard I saw his breath fog the beam of his flashlight. "This is bullshit," he murmured. "Where the hell is everyone?" He lowered his voice further. "Kidnap could have happened here. Maybe they chased somebody through the station." I considered that. Panic button, dead battery, empty registers, scattered papers. But no shell casings, no blood, no sign of fight. Nothing except that rhythmic tapping on glass, too measured to be the wind. I took a step toward the door, hand on Ramirez's shoulder. "We check the lot," I said. "Outside would be better. At least we'd have clearer sight lines." He nodded. We reached the front door, collided briefly as we swung it open. A gust of chilled air rushed in, carrying the faint stench of fuel and wet grass. The fog was thicker now, crawling across the ground in swirling tendrils. Flashlights on full beam, we swept the pumps. Still no vehicle. The taps on glass began again, this time on the front windows of the office. We raced forward. I flung my light against the window, white beam dancing erratically, but saw only fog and a row of empty pumps. The tapping stopped, and silence reclaimed the lot. Ramirez hunched low, shouting, "If someone's out there, make yourself known. Or we're clearing you as a suspect." He mimicked our policy, call out, give them a chance. Then he raised his voice, "Show us your hands, come out now." I watched his back as I pivoted, catching movement at the corner of my eye near pump 4. A dark shape leaning forward, then gone. I called it out. Ramirez swung his light, found nothing. Then, just beyond the nozzle hangers, mud became tracks. Deep, shoe-like impressions ending at a patch of grass where the blades lay crushed, then matted back down as if someone knelt there, looked inside the station, then slid back into the fog. My pulse raced, hands cold. I approached, kneeling by the prints. They were fresh, clods of earth still damp, little bits of grit from the gravel lot mixed in the treads. Too narrow for a man of average build, these looked like a woman's boot, size maybe 6 or 7. I frowned. Marisol Reyes would wear a smaller size, possible match. I radioed again. "Dispatch, we have footprints. Possible suspect. Request K9. No acknowledgement." Ramirez tapped me on the shoulder. He unholstered a collapsible baton. "Stay sharp, Jack." We moved to pump 4, lanterns low, scanning high for movement. Then Ramirez stumbled, back, swore, and held up his light. Something slick streaked across the concrete. Dark red, not rain. Fresh blood. I swallowed. He flicked his light back to the track I'd been examining. It led from the grass, across the lot toward the far fence, where a broken section sagged, wires twisted like barbed tongues. I followed. My brain ran through protocol, safety, containment, pursuit. Everything pointed toward chase, but going after whoever spilled blood in this void of darkness was suicide without backup. Still, I pressed forward, Ramirez beside me. We left the pumps behind, trudging through sludge where runoff pooled with oil slicks that refracted the beam of our flashlights into rainbow streaks. Tracks crossed the sodden grass, heading toward a row of pine trees that bordered the property. I kicked at the fence where the wire was loose, enough to slip through if you were careful. Ramirez slipped past first, then I ducked in after him. Our lights passed over the trees, revealing nothing but jagged shadows. And then, a low moan, so soft it could have been the wind sighing through needles. We froze. I felt Ramirez's hand on my back. His breath was shallow. "You hear it?" he mouthed. I gave a slow nod. My radio crackled, just a whisper of life, then static. That was enough for me to reach for it, key down. "All units, this is 42, suspect active. We need immediate backup." My voice shook despite my efforts. Silence. I hung up, and the moan came again, closer, more anguished, but still muffled as though someone pressed against bark. We clicked our flashlights forward and kept walking until the trees opened onto a crude fire pit of cinder blocks and charred logs. The ground around it was bare, no undergrowth, like someone cleared a circle. I scanned farther. To the west, a dirt road snaking into darkness. To the north, the faint glow of lights from a farmstead miles off. Blood trailed toward the pit. I knelt, shone my light on the soil. Dark, rust-colored patches leading up to a single boot print at the circle's edge. Above me, the long branches of a pine scraped together, prompting another soft groan. I shone the light skyward, nothing but needles and black. Then it occurred to me, no panic button here. Whoever led us here never thought we'd follow. Maybe they expected us to clear the station and leave. I glanced at Ramirez. He looked like he might be sick, but he gave me a nod, steeling himself. I whispered, "We go in or we regroup." He answered with his eyes. That was our job. We stepped into the cinder block circle. My boots kicked up ash and charred bits of wood that glowed faintly. The smell of smoke and burnt resin hit me like a wall. I pressed forward to the center, expecting to find a body or a weapon. Instead, I saw footprints pressed into the ash. 2 tracks that circled the center, like someone had paced in a frenzy, ending with a single print standing alone, toe pointed toward the station. I drew in a breath so sharp it burned my lungs. That direction made no sense. Whoever did this would have to cross open ground under our cruiser's lights. Then, there, on the edge of my flashlight's range, the shape of a boot nestled against the south wall of the station's fence. Closer inspection. Not just one, but 2 prints, ankle-deep in mud, half buried under needles that had fallen in the breeze. Ramirez cracked. "Son of a..." His radio exploded in static, a harsh, buzzing shriek that cut through the night. We both crouched, fists clenched on our holsters. I let the static fill the silence for a moment, then keyed the mic. "Dispatch, what the hell?" The mic went dead again. I slammed the radio off. Ramirez looked at me, eyes wide. "We need backup," he said, voice low. And then, behind us, a twig snapped. Not under our weight, but elsewhere, behind the trees. I spun, light searching. Nothing but black. The moan echoed again, but now it was a whisper, so close I could have sworn someone was right behind me, breathing in my ear. I felt the hair on my neck rise. I whispered, "Go." We bolted through the trees, stumbling back to the fence breach. I hauled myself over, branches clawing at my jacket. Ramirez followed, kicking mud off his boots. We crashed back into the lot, heading straight for the cruiser. As we climbed in, tires spinning in the mud, I caught one last glimpse of the fire pit's circle. There, on the far side, a dark shape, leaning against the fence, crawling on hands and knees, staring right at us. But in the dim light, I couldn't see a face. I slammed the door, revved the engine, and peeled away. Behind us, the gas station light flickered off. For a moment, the lot vanished, swallowed by darkness. Then the headlights swept past the pumps again, and there was nothing but fog. 23 minutes, according to the cruiser clock. Felt like a lifetime. Ramirez pounded his fist against the dashboard. "Call it in," he said. I hit the mic. "Dispatch, 42. Status? Dead. Not even static." I sunk in my seat, heart racing. Outside, the world was silent, but I could still feel those two prints in the ash, that moan threading between the trees, and the sense that something was watching, always watching, waiting for the moment we looked away. The dashboard clock blinked 0031 as we raced away from Valley Star's dead pumps and creaking doors. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel, every muscle in my body taut, eyes darting to the rearview mirror for signs we were followed. Detective Ramirez sat beside me, unhooking his radio mic only to find silence again. I hit the monitor button, nothing but static hiss. No K9, no backup, not even another unit checking in. We turned onto Route 5, away from the gas station, tires sliding through the fog. My mind replayed the ash circle, those prints pacing like a ritual, the low moan from the trees. It felt surreal, like we'd trespassed into someone's twisted sanctuary, and they hadn't forgotten. "Where to now?" Ramirez's voice was low, strained. I flicked on the cruiser's spotlight ahead. "We need eyes on Marisol's monitor signal. Last reliable ping was near Cedar Grove Trailhead, about 2 miles north." My voice cracked against the weight of uncertainty. He nodded, switching on his emergency lights momentarily to warn any traffic. The road was empty, deserted by design after midnight. Route 5 snaked between cornfields standing like sentinels in the gloom. The fog swirled over rows of stalks, looking alive, like something was shifting just beyond sight. I dialed dispatch again. 42 to dispatch. Suspect, possibly on foot, heading northbound along Route 5. Request coordinates relay and ground units. No reply. My breath caught. "Ramirez, they've got to hear us." He exhaled through clenched teeth. "Let's not wait for them." He tapped my shoulder. "I'm on traffic. You do the monitor. You think she's out there?" I nodded, reaching for the handheld GPS unit we carried in the cruiser's console. It glowed green, signal strong. An ankle monitor beep punctuated the dark cab. A small dot flickered on the screen, then vanished, then reappeared half a mile ahead. We were gaining on it. "Signal's moving," I said, voice taut. "It's crossing into the timber." I pointed into the cornfields. A narrow trail led through broken fence posts. "We cut through here." We parked on the shoulder, boots hitting gravel. The corn stalks rustled in the wind, whispering warnings. I drew my service weapon, light attached, casting an ovular beam that revealed cut corn, flattened stalks, and broken twine from where someone had forced their way. Ramirez followed, baton in hand. We moved single file along the trail. My breathing was loud in my ears, pulsing like a drum. The trail ended at a shallow ravine feeding into Cedar Creek. Up ahead, moonlight filtered through skeletal trees, illuminating the water's edge. The ankle monitor's ping crackled in the earpiece. Faster, erratic. That way, I said, pointing toward a cluster of boulders. We circled quietly, flashlight sweeping. No footprints in the mud by the creek bank, just broken reeds. I knelt, tracing the edge of the water. Small stones had been shifted, as though someone tried to make a path. My fingers brushed wet earth, cold, sticky. I lifted my hand, damp soil pressed under my glove. A sudden splash upstream made me leap back. Ramirez swore, leveled his light. Ripples spread across the water. A dark shape lurched beneath the surface, then vanished. I felt my pulse spike. Was that a person or an animal? Check upstream, I whispered. He crept forest side. I hugged the bank. Water lapped at my boots. I thought I heard faint breathing, almost human. But breath fog could have muffled anything. Ramirez's voice came through the trees. "Jack, you seeing this?" His light illuminated a large hollow log wedged between two rocks. Inside, clear impressions. A footprint pressed into mud, and then water pooled in the sole's grooves. Blood mingled with creek water, tinting it pink. I swallowed, voice low. "She crossed here." I radioed dispatch one more time. "We have confirmation. I'm moving in." Static swallowed me. I thumbed the mic off. Moving deeper into the ravine, our lights flickered off trunks, roots twisting like veins. The air was damp, close. Every breath tasted of earth and decay. I thought of my wife's face, years ago, before this job stole the untroubled nights. Now, nights were battlegrounds, dark, unpredictable. We trailed the creek bank until the lamp of Ramirez's light froze on an object half buried in mud. An ankle monitor strap, broken, soaked. The transmitter was missing. I felt adrenaline spike. She'd freed herself. Good for her, but terrifying for us. "Excellent," Ramirez murmured, tone bitter. Why couldn't she just wait for a judge? He sank to one knee, shining his light on the twisted metal. "Jack." I followed his gaze upstream, then realized the faint glow of another light bouncing on water. A torch, moving against the current. I should have taken cover, called it out. Professionalism drilled into me, but my feet stayed planted as the glow drew closer. Eyes adjusting, I saw a figure, thin frame hunched, crawling through the water, head just above the surface, clothing soaked, hair plastered to the skull. She raised her head, locking eyes with mine, empty, furious, and desperate. No words escaped her lips, but her eyes screamed hatred at the world that hunted her. Ramirez stepped sideways, raising his baton. His flashlight wavered. I steadied it with my free hand. In that beam, I caught her features. Hollow cheeks, sunken eyes, and a jagged scar rising from temple to jawline. Something I hadn't noticed in the house, disfigured by dried blood and clay. She rose, shaking off water like an animal shaking off rain. The torchlight revealed more. In her free hand, she clutched a jagged shard of broken pump glass, sharp as a shard of night. My training kicked in. "Drop it," I bellowed. My voice echoed across the ravine. She tilted her head, assessing. Then, without warning, she hurled the shard. Ramirez shouted and ducked behind a boulder as the glass whistled past, embedding in wood behind him. Splinters flew. I took a half step back, weapon raised. "Ma'am, please, this isn't necessary." But dread settled in my chest. Her breathing was ragged, frantic. She took another step forward, water dripping from her frame. Sudden movement. Ramirez lunged right, baton swinging in an arc that caught her arm. She screamed, a sound so acute it cut through my chest, and dropped to her knees. I froze, finger tightening on the trigger. In that moment, time slowed. Her eyes wild, Miranda screwed into them, and the ravine echoing with our ragged breaths. I gripped the barrel with my off hand and shouted, "Hold still or I'll shoot!" She paused, gasping, glass shard falling from her fingers. She dropped her head to her chest. Water lapped at her knees, red drifting out. I could smell iron. I holstered my weapon, stepping closer with caution. "You're bleeding," I said, voice softer now. Ramirez emerged, shallow breaths, sticking his baton under his arm. "We gotta get her help," he said. I nodded, kneeling beside her. She looked up once more, despair etched in every line of her face. "Camille," she rasped, whispering a name. Not Marisol. Another echo from that haunted house. I cuffed her gently, wincing as her wrists slipped into the cold steel. "Let's get you out of the water," I said, voice firm but kind. Ramirez shone his light behind us. There, imprinted in wet earth, 2 tracks led away from the ravine, bold and resolute, heading toward the dark woods. Neither of us addressed it. Up the bank, we half led, half carried her back to the cruiser. My hands shook as I slid the passenger door open. She slumped inside, head against the glass. Her eyes fluttered shut. I climbed in, closed the door, and Ramirez dropped the cruiser in gear. As we pulled onto the gravel, headlights swept over the creek where she'd stood, but there was nothing left. No torchlight, no tracks, just the water flowing into darkness. We radioed dispatch finally. Once the engine roared to life. "Unit 42 to dispatch, suspect in custody. Request EMS, possible laceration wound, ETA to station, 5 minutes. A clear voice responded, "Copy, 42, EMS en route." Relief washed over me. Backup at last. But as we peeled away, I kept glancing in the mirror. In the back seat, her form was still, but I could have sworn her head turned, watching the trees slip past. And deep in the woods, unseen, footprints pressed in mud led onward, into places where panic buttons don't reach. 23 minutes at Valley Star, 14 along Route 5, and now another uneasy 5 until we reached the lockup. I didn't know which part weighed heavier, her wild eyes, the broken shard, or those footprints vanishing into the fog. But I knew one thing. The night wasn't done with us yet. The drive back to Meridian County Central Station was silent, except for the hum of tires and Ramirez's heavy breathing. My boots still felt damp from the creek water, and every vibration through the cruiser's seat reminded me of the uneven ground we'd stumbled over. At 1:12, the digital clock blinked in the dashboard. 5 minutes until booking. 5 minutes to brace for the paperwork, the questions, the echo of her tortured name, Camille, that didn't match the monitor we'd chased. We pulled into the Sally port and illuminated the booking bay. The fluorescent bulbs flickered overhead as we guided her out. She slumped against the steel bulkhead, head hanging, one arm draped limply as blood seeped through the sleeve of her soaked shirt. Ramirez put a hand on her shoulder. "Let's get you up on the bench," he said quietly. Her eyes fluttered open, those hollow orbs locking on mine for a moment, before she blinked and closed them again. Inside the processing area, I radioed dispatch. 42 to dispatch. Booking suspect as Camille. Reyes, alias unknown. Charge, burglary. Resisting arrest, battery with a deadly weapon. Note, mental health evaluation recommended. I waited, and nothing but static. I pressed again. Dispatch, confirm. Finally, copy, Unit 42, proceed with intake. We booked her swiftly. I slid the cuffs tighter, checking for cuts. Ramirez cleaned the shard wound with antiseptic wipes while I read her rights. She murmured through chattering teeth, "It wasn't her." I paused. Who wasn't her? She didn't answer. Her hand reached out, brushing the witness stand's metal edge, leaving a smear of red on the bench. "Give her a blanket," I said. Ramirez fetched one, wrapping her. I glanced around the processing area. Empty urine cups on a counter. Intake forms stacked in neat piles. A single security camera lens angled toward the bench. Everything felt sterile and cold. I shivered, but it wasn't the air conditioning. It was the memory of the flickering light inside that house, the tapping glass at the gas station, and her crawling silhouette at the fence line. The intake officer took her photo. Under the bright camera flash, I saw the scar along her jaw again, raw and angry. I felt a twinge of guilt. We'd hurt her. But I reminded myself she'd attacked us. She'd tried to kill. As she slumped to the table, I caught a glimpse of the clock above the door. 1:25. 13 minutes since Valley Star. 13 minutes chasing a ghost through fog-soaked fields. Now she sat here, quiet but not calm, eyes hooded, hands fisted beneath the blanket. I stepped forward. "Camille," I said softly, crouching to meet her eye level. "Why were you out there? Who are you hiding from?" She lifted her head. Her lips trembled. "He's coming," she whispered. "He's always watching." I exchanged a glance with Ramirez. "Who's watching?" I pressed. She shuddered, gaze drifting to the camera lens above us. "I can't." Her voice trailed off. She pressed her palm to her forehead, rocking. I stood and placed a hand on her shoulder. "We'll keep you safe," I said, voice low. She flinched as if burned and slapped at my hand, hissing, "No! No safe!" Nearby, the intake officer cleared his throat. I stepped aside. "Take her through," I said. Ramirez helped guide her out. I lingered, staring at the spot where she'd sat. The blanket discarded, a smear of blood on the vinyl floor. Outside, the early dawn sky was beginning to lighten, pale hues brushing the horizon. The fog clung to the ground, a final whisper of the night's terror. I watched as officers moved to escort her to a holding cell, her shoulders hunched, footsteps slow. I climbed back into the cruiser, exhausted. Ramirez slid in beside me, unbuckling his baton. "I'll fill out the reports," he said. I nodded, pulling out my notebook. The ink had run in places from condensation, but I pressed on. I wrote down every detail: the panic alarm at 0007, the empty station, the tapping on glass, footprints in mud, the broken shard, the creek, the final chase, and her collapse by the monitor strap. I wrote until the page was full, then turned to start another. My pen scratched the paper, echoing in the quiet cab. Soon, my notebook was thick with scrawled lines. Part of me knew these reports would be questioned: her identity, her motive, the lack of witnesses, the dead radio. Another part knew the truth. Those nights didn't care about paperwork. They belonged to the dark corners of the state, to the silent alarms and broken fences, to the guys like me and Ramirez who chased frantic signals in the fog. At 2:05, I flipped the notebook closed. The cruiser's clock read 2:06, 14 minutes since she'd been locked up. And for me, the night was far from over, because in the corner of my vision, I could still see the ash circle at Valley Star, the shadows flickering between the pine trees, and the image of Camille's eyes, haunted, accusing, and terrified. I started the engine. The hum of the motor was comfort, a promise of motion. I drove toward the station lights, but the darkness clung to me. An unwelcome passenger whispering that our night of chasing phantoms was only half done. The early morning light was paling the horizon when I finally left the booking area. The station's fluorescent glare faded in the rearview mirror as I steered us back onto the blacktop, Ramirez riding shotgun with his eyes closed, head against the window. His breaths were shallow but steady, sleep still slipping through him in fits. I kept us on the county roads, wanting the solitude, the hum of tires on pavement. anything to dull the ringing in my ears from her cries. At 2:18 a.m., the ankle monitor tracker pinged again. A faint blip far west of the station, in the industrial park near the old textile mill. The signal was weak but consistent, only 2 bars. I keyed the mic. Dispatch, 42 en route to new ping at Old Mill. ETA 5 minutes. A crisp reply came this time. Copy, 42. Be advised, mill is condemned. Access via West Gate only. 30 seconds later, we turned off Route 12 onto a cracked service road lined with chain-link fences. Razor wire glinted in the weak beam of our headlights. The mill loomed ahead, a hulking silhouette of broken windows, rusted siding, and skeletal smokestacks jutting into the dark. I killed the lights and coasted through the open gate, the cruiser's engine echoing inside the cavernous yard. Ramirez stirred, rubbing his face. "What are we looking for?" he mumbled. I studied the GPS. The dot hovered near the southeast corner of the main building. "Her signal's inside," I said. "Could be she came here after booking, or someone moved her bracelet." We cut power and climbed out. The air reeked of stale rot and oil runoff. Gravel crunched beneath our boots. I shone my flashlight toward the mill's entrance. Double-wide steel doors, one hanging off its hinges. Faint graffiti covered the walls. Slogans faded by rain, skull tags. Someone's name scrawled in black spray paint. "Welcome," I muttered, voice low. Ramirez checked the perimeter with his baton, tapping windows to listen for hollow echoes. I moved to the doorway, drawing a deep breath. Inside, the floor was littered with broken glass, twisted rebar, and puddles that reflected my light in shifting patterns. The air was thick with dust motes swirling in the beam, and a distant, far-off drip echoed like a slow metronome. I radioed dispatch. 42 to dispatch, inside Old Mill. Confirm you copy. No answer. I cursed under my breath. Figures. We advanced in tandem down a wide corridor. Along the walls, rusted pipes dripped dark fluid. Every step kicked up stale dust. Every breath tasted of iron and decay. The ankle monitor ping crackled. 2 bars, then 1, then flickered off. I cursed again. The tracker was faltering, just when I needed it most. "Split up?" Ramirez asked. He was closer to the door, his light grazing the corridors branching left and right. I pressed back. "Too dangerous. Stay together." He grunted, holstering the baton and drawing his sidearm. I drew mine, careful to keep the muzzle low. We reached a T in the corridor. One fork led deeper into darkness, the other toward a cavernous room with tall ceilings. The ping came again, inside that room. I swallowed and nodded toward the left. "Go." We walked into the chamber. The ceiling soared 20 feet overhead. Broken rafters crossed like dying ribs. Moonlight filtered through shattered skylights, casting pale beams that sliced through the gloom. In the center lay a rusted conveyor belt. Belt links snapped, rollers corroded. To my right, a collapsed mezzanine stair. To my left, a row of locked storage stalls, likely once used to house chemicals or cloth bales. The tracker blipped. 2 bars, over there. I inhaled and stepped forward, flashlight sweeping the stalls. The first 2 doors were sealed shut. Padlocks rusted solid. The next stall door was ajar, hinges red with rust. I nudged it with my boot. It swung inward onto darkness. We entered. The beam landed on scattered debris, old sacks, rust flakes, a broken shopping cart. Then, on the far wall, I saw fresh footprints. Muddy, bare dirt tracked along the worn concrete. They led toward a steel door at the back. Ramirez knelt to inspect them. "No boot prints," he said low. "Just bare footprints. She's barefoot." My stomach clenched. I swept the stall again, shining light on every surface. In one corner, near a pile of rags, I spotted something. A piece of cloth from her shirt torn away. I moved toward it, stepping over scattered glass. My light flickered and went out for a heartbeat, then returned. In that dark instant, I felt a flicker of movement behind me. I spun, but the corridor was empty. My radio crackled to life, muffled, distant. 42, do you copy? I hit the mic. Go ahead. A different dispatcher voice spoke. We lost you after booking. Are you okay? I exhaled. We're inside the mill. Suspect possibly in locked stall. Need entry team. He responded, copy. ETA 3 minutes, hold position. I clicked off. Ramirez tapped his holster. 3 minutes isn't much, she could bolt. I nodded. Stay sharp. I approached the steel door. It had no handle, only a small observation port covered by a metal flap. I lifted it, peering through a round window with spiderweb cracks. Inside was darkness. No movement. But my light glanced off something metallic on the floor. The transmitter from her ankle monitor still blinking. Then the light caught a flash of skin. An arm, lifeless, draped over a broken wooden pallet. My breath caught. I knocked on the door frame. Camille, it's Deputy Thornton. Show yourself. Silence. I rapped again. Still nothing. Ramirez moved beside me, shielded by his blanket jacket. I switched my radio back on. Dispatch, suspect sighted inside stall. In custody but not breathing? My words stumbled. On the other side of the door, the monitoring light blinked, gently. Even as her body slumped. I reached for the doorknob. There wasn't one. I tried the frame. The door wouldn't budge. Ramirez crouched and tapped on the hinges. Looks welded. He slid a multi-tool from his belt. Give me a minute. I stood back, weapon raised, light trained on the window. He worked quickly, prying at the edge, while I scanned the chamber. Shadows moved at the edge of the skylight beams. I tracked them, but the darkness shifted. My heart pounded, matching the intermittent blink of the transmitter light behind the door. Then, through the crack Ramirez had pried, I caught a glimpse of her face. Pale, eyes closed, lips parted as though breathing. But the chest didn't move. And then I saw more. Dark shapes around her wrist, thin wires trailing off into the stall's corner, disappearing into a hole in the wall. Jack, Ramirez whispered, voice tight. She's wired to something. I leaned in, squinting. The wires vanished from view. I yanked back. What the hell? He straightened, breathing hard. Looks like some sort of harness, not part of the monitor. He watched me. We gotta get this open now. I raised my radio. Dispatch, we have a body rigged to wires inside. Possible electrocution hazard. Need EMS and a tech unit. Silence, then static, then his voice. Copy, hold tight. Tech ETA 2 minutes. 2 minutes to free a woman wired to God knows what. The mill groaned around me, the pipes rattling, metal shifting. My flashlight beam trembled. Ramirez slammed the door's edge. If I can pop this, he jammed the multi-tool deeper. The door rattled. Then a low hum began. The wires behind the door crackled with electricity. Sparks flickered at the edges of the crack. I staggered back. Ramirez, get away! He froze. In the stall, the transmitter's light blinked faster, red now. A high-pitched whine rose to a shriek. I felt my ears ring. Jack! Ramirez's voice cracked. Is that? A bolt of blue light exploded through the gap, illuminating the chamber in a flash. I slammed myself against the opposite wall, twisting as the light scorched the stall door. Ramirez yelped, dropping the tool. He fell back against me. The beams from above flickered, and in that pulse, I saw her face, ghostly, illuminated by that electric blast, eyes ajar, staring at me. Then everything went dark. Skylights collapsed dust down. Lights went out, the shuttered cries of the building. My heart thundered as I groped for Ramirez. I found him, pressing his chest against mine. Our lights were dead, and the only sound was the hum of electricity fading. We were plunged into silence so thick it pressed against our rib cages. I shook him. "Ramirez, are you okay?" No answer. I fumbled for my radio. It sparked in my hand and died. I drew my backup flashlight. With a flick, it sputtered on. I shone it on him. Blood trickled from his temple, cut by a piece of broken tool. He slumped, dazed. I staggered to the stall, breathing hard. The panel of the door was scorched, wires frayed and smoking. The transmitter lay on the concrete, blinking its last. No body, no sign of her. Just empty space and charred fragments of wiring. I stood rooted, mind racing. All I could hear was my own breathing and the flicker of dying electronics. Then, behind me, from the far corner of the chamber came a soft, deliberate tapping, metal on metal. I spun, shining my light across the vast room. The beam landed on the mezzanine catwalk above, where a dark figure emerged, slender, barefoot. She stepped forward, fingers trailing the guardrail as though savoring the contact. Her eyes caught the light briefly, glinting with something that could have been triumph or madness. No blood, no wound, just the woman we thought we'd subdued. She raised her arm, then lowered it, as though beckoning me to come closer. And then, without a sound, she slipped backward into the shadows, disappearing into the labyrinth of steel beams and broken rafters. I clicked my light wild. Nothing. The tapping stopped. I called out, "Ramirez!" No response. He lay still, breathing but unmoving. I dropped to my knees beside him. "Ramirez, stay with me." I checked his pulse. Fast, erratic. I hit the radio again, but all I got was dead air. Dawn was breaking outside, but inside this old mill we were trapped in darkness and shadows that played tricks on the mind. I hauled Ramirez to his feet. He leaned on me, weak but conscious enough to nod. I pointed the flashlight toward the exit corridor. "We need to get out, now." He swallowed. "What about her?" He meant Camille. I didn't know. I shouldn't admit I didn't know if she was alive or if she'd rigged this entire place to kill us both. All I knew was that whatever had her eyes so hollow was still out here, waiting in the ruins. I half dragged, half supported Ramirez down the corridor. Every step was agony for him, but he kept moving. We reached the open doorway and emerged into the yard. Dawn's first rays filtered through the smokestacks, illuminating the mill's facade in amber light. Behind us, the mill's cavernous mouth yawned shut in darkness. But inside, in the bowels of that place, I knew Camille Reyes, or whoever she really was, waited. The light of dawn pressed against the horizon as Ramirez and I limped away from the mill's collapsing shadows. Every muscle in my legs burned, fatigue and adrenaline warring within me. Ramirez leaned heavily on my shoulder, eyes glazed but determined. Behind us, the mill's silhouette stood like a wounded beast, its broken windows staring blindly into the sky. I kept moving west along the service road, toward the patrol station. Each step I took left a bloody footprint on the gravel, Ramirez's blood from his temple wound mixing with my own sweat. The radio remained dead. I didn't even try. Our backup had never arrived. As we trudged, the ankle monitor tracker in my pocket buzzed, a single bar of signal flickering like a warning light. The dot on the GPS blinked, her signal, pulsing slowly, then extinguishing, only to reappear further south. She was moving again. I paused and checked the unit. The battery was low but alive. Ramirez slumped against the cruiser's hood when we reached it, breathing ragged. I laid him on the pavement and knelt to examine his wound. No longer bleeding heavily, but painful. He set his jaw. "She's heading to the river," he rasped. He tapped the GPS. The dot now hovered over the riverside bridge, nearly 3 miles south. I bit down on a curse. "We don't have 3 more miles in us," I said, voice tight. But before he could answer, the tracker blinked again. 2 bars, and the dot jumped to the wooded area beside the county fairgrounds, just a mile south. We cut through the fairgrounds, I decided, hefting Ramirez to his feet. The fairgrounds lay empty at this hour. Fences tall and silent, carnival rides dormant, tents collapsed from last fall's events. It was perfect cover for her. We followed the gravel path to the fair entry gate, locked, chain and padlock securing it. I rummaged in my pocket for bolt cutters we kept for evidence collection, only to realize I'd dropped them back at the mill. Ramirez groaned. Damn it. A section of fence had been vandalized, wires twisted aside, a foot-wide gap low to the ground. She'd gone this way. I helped Ramirez through, then followed him in. The fairground paths wound between empty stalls, picnic tables overturned, the ghostly forms of dismantled rides looming. I heard only our boots and the distant caw of a lone crow. I tapped my flashlight for Ramirez. We moved toward the big-top tent frame off to our left, a hulking aluminum skeleton draped with tattered canvas. Inside, darkness gaped like an open mouth. The monitor's dot was there, pinging irregularly. I forced Ramirez forward. "We're near her," I whispered. "Stay with me." He nodded, expression grim. We slipped under the tent's edge. Inside, the canvas walls swayed in the morning breeze, casting dancing shadows. The smell here was different. Old popcorn, stale sweat, the faint odor of gasoline from nearby generator fuel. I stopped, eyes narrowing at a stain on the canvas. Dark red, crusted at the edge, like it had bled here days ago, but still fresh in appearance. Ramirez's breath rasped. "Jack, this place." I shone my light across the tent floor, sawdust littered with footprints, bare footprints intersecting with muddy boot prints. They formed a path through the center toward a wooden stage where a lone folding chair sat, facing inward. I swallowed hard. Something about that chair felt wrong. I approached, each step heavier than the last. On the seat lay a single gray slipper, size small, the kind a woman might wear. I picked it up gently. It felt damp, like it had been in water. As I turned, Ramirez hissed. He'd spotted something at the tent's opposite wall. My light swung to reveal words scrawled in red across the canvas. "He watches you." The letters dripping downward as though painted with fresh paint. My breath caught. The letters shrieked menace. I tapped Ramirez's arm. He held up his light at a small tear in the canvas, peering through. We moved over. 2 slits formed a crude window to the outside, a view of the fair's Ferris wheel, its outline dwarfed by the tent. But the seat compartments were empty, motionless. We couldn't see her. Suddenly, the tent flap behind us rustled. We spun around, flashlights converging on the entrance as it parted. A figure slipped through. Camille, or someone wearing her soaked shirt, barefoot, hair wild, eyes pinpricks of light against shadow. Her wrists showed faint scars from the cuffs. She held another shard of glass, larger this time, trimmed jaggedly, reflecting our beams. Ramirez ducked behind me, baton raised. I steadied my weapon. "Camille!" I shouted. "Drop it now!" She tilted her head, pressing a finger to her lips. "Shh!" Then dashed past the stage, sprinting toward the back exit where the canvas opened to the midway. I bolted after her, adrenaline driving my legs into a run I didn't think I had left. Ramirez trailed behind. we burst through the rear of the tent into the fairway. The early sun carved sharp shadows between rides and booths. I saw her, half a dozen yards ahead, darting between a row of food stalls. She glided like a ghost, every step lithe despite her wounded arm. I raised my voice. "Stop! Evansville PD, you're under arrest." She didn't slow. Instead, she veered toward the Ferris wheel's base, where the support beams formed a lattice of steel. I followed, weaving through broken game prizes, discarded ticket stubs, the ground crunching underfoot. As I neared, she reached the central access ladder for maintenance. She lifted the hatch cover and disappeared inside the metal frame. I paused below, shining my light upward through the rungs. No sound but the echo of distant traffic on the highway and our ragged breaths. "Camille," I called, voice echoing in the steel canyon. No reply. Ramirez caught up, gasping. She's gone up," he managed. I assessed the ladder, a narrow climb, slick with grease. Between the support beams, the open sky beckoned. If she was up there, she'd be dangerous. Height, glass shard, desperation. But I had no choice. I started the climb, boots finding rust-flaked rungs, gloves slick. Halfway up, my radio crackled. Static, then a voice. "Unit 42, status." My heart lurched. I hit the mic. "I'm on the Ferris wheel ladder, suspect climbing. Request K9, air unit." The reply came, "Copy, 42, K9 en route." Air support unavailable. I climbed faster. Ramirez followed, awkward in his injured state but relentless. The rungs shuddered under us. I reached the first platform, an inspection hatch where I could step onto the wheel's underside. I looked down. The fairground stretched beneath, a maze of metal and faded banners. And above me, the wheel's hub and spokes extended into the sky. No sign of her on the platform. I circled, flashlight glancing over support braces. Then I heard a soft click. A shoe slipping on metal. My light swung to catch her form. She crouched on a crossbeam, about 20 feet above, looking out toward the grounds. Her back was to me, hair matted, shirt torn. The shard, raised in her hand, glinted. I climbed onto the platform. Every bolt and beam rattled underfoot. I raised my voice. "Camille, step away from the edge and climb down." She didn't move. Instead, she turned slowly, eyes wide, raw fear and defiance mingling. I saw a single tear track down her cheek. She hesitated, weight shifting on the beam. I took a step toward her. "You won't make it down from there. You'll fall." She looked past me, gaze fixed on the fair below. "He'll catch me," she whispered. "He watches." My heart thudded in my chest. "That's not real. It's just you and me now." Her hands clenched the shard. She slumped, head bowed. I inched closer, trying to coax her down. Ramirez reached the platform's hatch, climbing out onto the beam. His voice was gentle. "Camille, let us help you." Suddenly, the beam rattled. I turned, heart in my throat. Underneath, two shadowed forms slipped through the platform's supports, moving quickly toward the next support leg. Figures tall and slender, barefoot, their movements eerily synchronized, like marionettes. I shook my head. No way. Ramirez saw them too. "Jack," he whispered. I realized, gut twisting. There weren't two of her out here, something else, something off. But I couldn't say fire from a height where my bullet would ricochet unpredictably. I needed her down, now. I focused back on Camille, inching forward. She raised her head and met my eyes. "They're here," she said, voice hollow. "You can't save me." My breath caught. Behind her, the two figures paused, one on each side of a support beam. Silhouettes merged with steel. The shard in her hand trembled. "Trust me," I said. "I'm not leaving you." She shook her head, stepping backward, toward the open air. I lunged, grabbing her arm. Her other hand swung the shard, just enough for me to feel the blade's edge graze my sleeve. I pulled her inward, wrestling for balance on the shaky beam. Ramirez lunged from behind, securing her other arm. The three of us teetered. Then, with a shriek, she twisted and leapt off the beam, disappearing through the steel spokes and out of sight. I scrambled to the edge, peering down. No body, no blood. Just the whirling spokes and the ground spinning beneath. I heard a thud, soft and distant, then nothing but silence. "Ramirez!" I shouted, voice raw. I climbed to where she'd vanished, heart pounding, scanning the spokes. But the wheel's shadowed structure blocked the view beneath. I couldn't see the ground 20 feet below. My radio crackled, Unit 42, status. I hit the mic on the ladder rail. She jumped. Panic seeped into my voice. She jumped from the wheel. Static swallowed me. Ramirez's voice cracked as I finally looked down, just in time to see a dark shape moving away across the fairgrounds, limping but alive. She'd landed on a tent canopy, tumbled off, and taken off toward the woods beyond the grounds. I swallowed bile. "She's alive," I said, "but she's heading into the woods." Ramirez slumped beside me. "We can't follow, not like this." I nodded, blood pounding in my ears. The Ferris wheel's metal groaned as it settled. Below, the fairgrounds were coming alive with incoming morning traffic. Farmers heading to fields, joggers on nearby trails, not police backup. I climbed down in a haze, helping Ramirez. The fairgrounds gate lay yards away, open now, perhaps cut through by someone else. We crossed toward our cruiser, each step a struggle. I radioed dispatch one last time. Suspect jumped Ferris wheel at fairgrounds, evasive. Backup needed, urgent. She's... I hesitated. What to say? Alive, but dangerous. Plot unknown, proceed with caution. Silence answered. We reached the cruiser. I clipped Ramirez's belt into the passenger seat, buckle clicking ominously. I started the engine. Ramirez swallowed. "Jack," he said, "we can't just chase ghosts anymore." I stared at the morning sky, pale gold and soft blue. The fairy lights of the fair rides glinted in the sun. "No," I said, "we can't." But I knew she was out there, free, wounded, desperate, watched by something neither of us understood. I shifted into gear and drove toward the woods beyond the fairgrounds. The woods where panic alarms went unheard. The woods where something waited. And I vowed and cursed under my breath that I wouldn't stop searching until we found her. Because God help us, we both knew we weren't done with the night's terror yet. The canopy of oaks loomed ahead as we left the fairgrounds behind, the morning light filtering through the leaves in restless patterns. I navigated the cruiser onto the overgrown service road that led into the woods, branches scraping the roof, gravel crunching beneath tires. Ramirez sat stiffly beside me, eyes fixed on the patch of forest where Camille had vanished. Every bounce sent fresh pain through his temple, his breathing shallow but steady. My grip tightened on the steering wheel as I switched off the headlights, relying on the sun overhead to guide us. The road narrowed, weeds reaching in like skeletal fingers. I tapped the ankle monitor tracker in my jacket pocket. No signal. The dot had disappeared somewhere beyond the Ferris wheel. I killed the engine where the asphalt gave way to dirt, then climbed out, pistol drawn. Ramirez followed, shouldering his baton. The woods were silent, too silent. No birds, no rustle of small animals, only the distant hum of traffic on Route 5 and our own exhalations. I flicked on my flashlight in one hand and keyed the mic with the other. Dispatch, 42 off-road near the fairgrounds, searching woods for suspect. No signal. Static. I punched it again. Silence. I shoved the radio back in its holder. We pressed into the undergrowth. Fallen logs blocked the way. We climbed over, boots thudding on sodden earth. Every step kicked up leaf litter and the smell of damp decay. Fallen limbs crunched underfoot, our presence announcing itself to the forest. Ramirez paused, pointing. There, bare footprints in mud, pressed deep where the earth was soft. We followed them single file, light beams converging on the trail. The prints led in shallow arcs, as though she'd been stumbling, then suddenly straightened as though she remembered where she needed to go. After 10 minutes, we came to a small clearing ringed by pine. The ground was churned, rotting pine needles mixed with fresh blood spatters. I knelt to inspect, droplets leading toward the west edge of the clearing, towards a ravine. My chest tightened. I knew that ravine, the one feeding into Cedar Creek. It was where we'd nearly lost her before. We moved faster now, following the blood trail. The ravine dropped away steeply, the bottom invisible from above. I eased forward, pulling my light around. The blood reappeared on a rock shelf, smeared where someone had braced themselves. The shelf sloped down toward a narrow ledge, barely wide enough to stand on. Ramirez swallowed. She went this way? He rasped. I nodded. She's hurt. She'll need medical attention. But the thought of leaving her bleed out wasn't in me. Professional duty or not, I wasn't walking away. We climbed down the slope carefully, boots slipping on wet moss. I anchored my flashlight to a nearby branch so both hands were free. My fingers brushed the jagged edge of shale where it gave way to the ledge. I braced myself and edged forward. Ramirez followed in my tracks. At the bottom, the space opened into a narrow canyon. Walls of limestone rising on both sides. The creek ran through, trickling over stones. Here, the scent of damp earth was stronger, mixed with pine resin and something like old flame. The sun didn't reach this. Far, only faint gray daylight filtered through a slit above. We followed the creek bank eastward. One moment, the prints vanished. Then, across the water, I spotted a shape hunched under a rock overhang. I whispered, "There," and Ramirez nodded. We crossed the shallow water, summing rush over our boots. Each footfall created ripples that sent pebbles skittering. Under the overhang, she sat, clutching a sweatshirt to her side. She looked smaller, almost childlike, huddled in the damp shadow. Her wet hair obscured her face. When my light settled on her, she raised her head, and I saw the wound, deep, jagged, on her left flank. She winced, and a thin line of blood traced down her ribs. "Camille," I called softly, keeping my voice calm. Ramirez crouched beside me, hands open in non-threatening gestures. She didn't move, just stared, hollow and distant. I knelt in front of her. "You're safe now. We're here to help." Her lips parted, but no words came. She pressed a hand to her ear, as though listening for something beyond the hollow. I reached out, hesitating. Just then, a twig snapped behind us. Ramirez spun, baton raised, light sweeping the canyon walls. I kept my focus on her. "I'm gonna need your help," I said. "Let me see that wound." She shook her head, rigid, eyes wide. Then, without warning, she bolted, darting upstream through the narrow gorge. I scrambled to my feet, calling out, "Hold on!" Ramirez rose, rushing after her. I caught up just as she reached a slim ledge at the water's edge. On the opposite side of the creek, another small alcove under a ledge. The gap was 6 feet of water and rock, too wide for a hop with that injury. She leaned forward as though to step in, but I intervened. I grabbed her arm. She hissed, pulling back with surprising strength despite the blood and cold. The shard glinted in her hand. She pressed her back to the wall, sliding until her shoulders hit rock, breathing ragged. I whispered, "Camille, you're not alone." My voice shook. "Please." Ramirez arrived then, shining his flashlight on the alcove opposite. "You want to stay there? Go on?" She didn't respond, just stared ahead. I glanced down at her wound, the blood dark and congealed. "We have to get that stitched." She turned, raising the shard. I lifted my weapon but lowered my arm. "No gun," I said, voice flat. "Just me." I kicked a pebble toward the water, splash. She flinched. I kept my tone gentle. "Ramirez, get the med kit." He unzipped his pack and retrieved the trauma bag. I held the light over her. "Stay calm," I said. "Just breathe." She inhaled shallowly. I cleaned the wound, washed away the worst of the blood, my gloves slick. She didn't protest. I applied pressure bandage. She winced. I stepped back. She looked at me then, her eyes clearer. For a moment the forest's shadow faded, and all I saw was a frightened woman. I exhaled. "Better?" She nodded once, then faintly. "He's here." My chest tightened. I turned toward the gorge entrance. Nothing but rock and trees. "Who?" I asked. No answer. I felt a tickle at the back of my neck like a prickle of awareness. Behind me, the creek gurgled. Leaves rustled. My flashlight beam wavered as I scanned. I thought I saw movement. A shape perched on a ledge high above, crouched like a panther. I called out, "Hey!" But the shape melted into the stone. Ramirez slipped her arms around her shoulders. "You okay?" he whispered. She tilted her head toward the high ledge. "He's watching from there." I shone the light upward, illuminating slick rock face. No path, no footholds. "Not possible," I said. "You can't climb that." She pressed her palm to her forehead, tears brimming. "He can." My heart hammered. I had to believe it was a hallucination, a fevered delusion brought on by blood loss and fear. But the feeling in my gut told me otherwise. I stood, extending my hand to her. "We're taking you in," I said, "to a hospital." She looked at my hand, then at Ramirez's. Then she dropped the shard, letting it clatter on the stones. It echoed in the canyon. I exhaled a shaky breath and stepped forward, helping her to her feet. She leaned on me, lean and trembling. "They won't let me," she murmured. "Who won't?" I whispered. She closed her eyes, pain and terror mixing in her features. "He won't." I felt Ramirez move beside me, ready. "Let's go," he said softly. We started back up the ravine toward the fairgrounds, her between us, every footstep echoing. The morning sun had climbed higher, but here in the gorge it felt dusk, shadows lingering at the edges. As we climbed the slope, I glanced upward, half expecting to see a figure looming on a ledge, but saw only sky. I shook my head, focusing on moving forward. Behind us, in the canyon, the whisper of dripping water carried a faint, unmistakable sound, metal against stone, like the scrape of something climbing, something with too many fingers. I didn't look back. Instead, I lifted the trauma bag and kept us moving toward the edge where sunlight broke through. Because whatever he was, it wasn't done with us yet. And I didn't plan to let him, whatever he was, win. 22 minutes in the gorge and we'd nearly lost her again. But this time, as we neared dawn's full light, I vowed to carry her out of that darkness, even if it meant carrying the weight of whatever nightmares followed us home. I led Ramirez and Camille out of the narrow ravine. Each step uphill a battle against gravity, exhaustion, and the ache in our limbs. The trail rose steeply, roots tangling underfoot, mud sucking at our boots. Camille leaned on me, pale and shivering, the pressure bandage at her side damp with blood. Ramirez steadied her from the other side, his own wound bound and throbbing. Above us, the forest canopy opened to fragments of sky, pale morning light filtering down in slender beams. As we crested the ridge, the fairgrounds lay below, now bathed in sunrise gold. Beyond, the patchwork of fields and roads of Meridian County stretched to the horizon. I paused, pressing my palm to my forehead, sweat and grime mixing in my hair. The smell of pine and damp earth filled my lungs, less oppressive than the gorge, but no less uneasy. I glanced at Camille. Her eyes were closed, face drawn, but a faint flicker of relief passed over her features at the sight of civilization ahead. "Just a bit further," I said, voice rough. "We'll get you help." She nodded, head lolling. Ramirez gave me a look, a silent question. I pointed toward the service road where our cruiser waited, tires caked in mud. "That way." We descended the final slope carefully, watching for loose stones. Every snap of a branch or distant crow made our hearts jolt. The woods behind us felt alive, too quiet, as though everything was listening. I kept my light sweeping the shadows even though daylight had come. My grip on Camille tightened when I thought I saw a figure perched on a fallen log, but each time I darted my beam there was nothing but moss and leaf litter. At last, we broke through the tree line onto the gravel shoulder. The cruiser's engine idled, heat haze rising from the hood. I half ran the last few yards, helping Camille into the passenger seat. Ramirez climbed in beside her, closing the door firmly. I settled into the driver's seat and hit the mic. 42 to dispatch, we're south of Fairgrounds, ready to transport for medical. "Status?" a clear voice answered. "Copy, 42, EMS en route." ETA 3 minutes. Relief washed over me. I keyed the mic again. "Copy." "Thanks." The engine roared as I pulled back onto the road. I kept my eyes on the rearview mirror, expecting to see those shapes, or her, or something else lingering in the trees. But the mirror showed empty woods, still and silent. We headed north toward the county hospital. Camille sat slumped against her bandaged side, eyes open now, staring at the window. She traced raindrop patterns on the glass that shimmered in the morning sun. I noticed her fingers twitch, restless, as though waiting for something to pounce. I slid my gaze back to the road, then touched her shoulder. "You'll be okay," I said quietly. She met my eyes, and for a moment I saw gratitude, shadowed by fear. Then she whispered, "He's following us." I swallowed hard. "Whose?" My voice betrayed a note of panic. Ramirez looked over, glazing his eyes at me. Camille closed them, shivering. "He's always watching," she breathed. "He's here." My hand gripped the wheel. "We're almost there," I said, tone firm. "Just hold on." The cruiser rumbled along Route 12, past fields waking in dawn light, past the silent mill that still loomed in our memories. Interstate traffic began to hum in the distance. I flicked on the overhead light in the cabin, official protocol. The sudden glare made Camille flinch, but she leaned forward, cupping her side. Ramirez cleared his throat, voice low. "Hospital up ahead." I nodded, turning off the bright light and onto the hospital's driveway. Flashing EMS lights greeted us as we pulled under the ambulance bay awning. Paramedics rushed forward, opening Camille's door. They assessed her wound, using professional calm that both reassured and reminded me how badly we'd neglected our own armor. One medic said, "We'll take it from here, officer," and gently lifted Camille onto a stretcher. She let them guide her, eyes fixed on me, and in them I saw a flicker of terror that hadn't left her all night. As they wheeled her inside, I whispered, "You're safe now." Ramirez exhaled, sagging back into the passenger seat. I killed the engine and sat in silence. The bright hospital lights filtered through the bay. Voices and footsteps echoed from the corridors beyond. EMS personnel moved quickly, efficiency in action. I finally keyed the mic. 42 to dispatch. Patient transferred. We'll file the report from station. A calm reply came. I sat back, closing my eyes for a moment. My shirt was sticky with my own blood. My hands trembled. The night's horrors clawed at my mind. The house. Component. Placement: the gas station, the mill, the wheel, the gorge, and always Camille. Her hollow eyes, the shard, her whispered warnings of he who watched. I took a deep breath and opened the door. Morning air hit me crisp and cold. Ramirez climbed out, stepping carefully. I handed him my flashlight. He tucked it into his belt. We walked toward the exit of the bay. Before exiting, I paused and looked back at the hospital doors. They swung closed on Camille, sealing her into safety. I glanced to the surrounding trees, expecting something, to feel those watching eyes, but saw none. Finally, I stepped into the daylight alongside Ramirez. He placed a hand on my shoulder. "Get some rest," he said quietly. "We did our best." I nodded, voice thick. "Let's get the paperwork done." But inside, I knew that the paperwork was only the smallest part of this night. The real work was unraveling what we'd witnessed and what Camille believed, that something watched from the shadows, that it could inhabit the spaces between steel and stone, that it could follow anyone, anywhere. As we walked toward the station cruiser, I caught the reflection of our vehicles in the bay windows. Two silhouettes, myself and Ramirez, looking back at us. I stared hard, half expecting to see another figure standing behind. But there was nothing, only our tired forms. Still, I felt the weight of the night settle in my chest, a reminder that darkness lingers even in daylight. And as I slid into the driver's seat, I knew I would return to those shadows another night, to chase the echoes of panic buttons, to answer silent alarms, to protect the living from whatever haunts these woods. Because this job doesn't end with sunrise. Not for officers like me, or for the memories we carry from nights that bend reality. And not for Camille, whose haunted eyes will linger in my mind until I understand what truly watches from the dark. And that question, what watches, remains unresolved, echoing in the spaces between heartbeat and breath, promising that the terror of one night can never be fully laid to rest. I stepped off the midnight shift with heavy legs and an even heavier mind, the hum of the cruiser's engine still pulsing in my ears as I eased into the driver's seat. The streetlight above flickered 3 times in succession, then hung stubbornly dark, leaving only the soft glow of my dashboard gauges to outline the vacant lot behind the old quick stop. I shoved my cap back against my scalp and ran a hand through sweat-damp hair, habit more than necessity. I'd been through longer nights than this. I keyed the mic. "Dispatch, here's 12. Silent alarm at Quick Stop North Elm. No other units in range, over." Static crackled, but no answer came. Typical. Radios die when you need them most out here. I climbed out, boots on gravel, the sound echoing down empty streets. The air smelled damp, like rain left in the grass, but the sky was clear, stars winking distant warnings. I gripped my flashlight in my left hand, holstered piece on my right, mind ticking through procedure. Cover, assess, secure. The front doors of the quick stop were blocked by a steel grate, old and rusted, half hinged to one side as if someone had tried to barge in then lost the nerve. No broken glass, no footprints in the dust. I circled left, peered through a cracked side window into the fluorescent's cold glare on empty shelves, the vending machine door ajar. A crushed soda can skidded under the glow of my beam. I paused. My heart was calm, too calm. I needed action to tether the fear that always nibbles at me when a silent alarm goes off. I hit the mic again. Dispatch, 12th. I'm making entry. Please advise ETA on backup. Nothing. I cracked the grate with a gloved hand. It rattled free. A breath later, I eased the handle of the glass door and stepped inside. The fluorescent lights buzzed, half alive, half dead. I waved my flashlight over the counter. Register drawer open, cash tray empty, a smear of red, dried coffee, I hoped, on the countertop. Behind me, the door clicked shut. I spun around, pistol raised. Nothing but aisles stretching back into gloom. I forced a chuckle. Sounded like broken glass in my ears. Get it together, Davis, I muttered. I proceeded down the first aisle, gravel still crunching under my boots, canned beans and boxed cereal humming faint reassurance. Yet every corner held a doubt. Empty shelves at odd angles, a fallen package here, a plastic bag caught on a rack there. I swept the beam across the floor, black scuff marks leading deeper, like a trail of spilled ink curling toward the back exit. My pulse quickened. Something was trying to tell me this wasn't just a panic button prank. I called out again, voice firm. Evansville PD, anyone here, speak up. Only silence answered, thick as tar. I crept toward the back, passing the glass-fronted coolers with a chill that nipped at my skin. Inside one, a half-eaten sandwich lay on a shelf, its paper wrapper damp, smeared with mustard. Rats, probably, common out here, scavenging. I trained my flashlight on the dark corners between units where the motor's hum should have died but hadn't. Nothing moved. At the rear, the emergency door's panic bar was bent. Someone had been desperate enough to force it. I slapped the bar. It clicked open and swung inward, revealing the back alley. A single tire track cut through mud, headed east past the gas pumps. I stepped through the metal door swinging shut with finality. Outside, a cool breeze whispered garbage across the lot. I scanned the dim outlines. Fuel stand silent. Digital price signs blinking nothing but broken lines. The alley's brick walls rose like silent judges. Graffiti faded into chipped paint. My light caught a figure slumped against the curb, hoodie up, arms wrapped around knees. I approached, heart hammering. "Ma'am," I said softly. The figure looked up, gaunt eyes, pupils so large they swallowed the iris, pale face half hidden in shadow. I knelt. "You okay?" She didn't answer, only stared with a gaze that both begged and warned. I lowered my weapon, placed the flashlight on the ground. "I'm Officer Davis. You hit the panic alarm, okay? We're here to help." She shifted, pulling a radio from her pocket. An old push-to-talk, antenna bent like a question mark. "They said, if I got stuck, hit this," she whispered. Breath hitched. "They'll come. They always come." Her voice trembled. "She who?" I murmured, though I already knew enough. Human traffickers, smugglers, someone using the convenience store as a drop point. I extended a hand. "Can you stand?" She shook her head, too weak, bruises along her arms and ribs, purple, angry arcs fading into yellow. I scanned the lot again, no cars idling, no distant figures retreating into shadows. Still, the weight in her eyes pressed down on me. Danger was imminent. I swept my light over the back door, decided to move her inside until backup arrived. No sense in leaving her out here. I wrapped an arm under her knees and lifted. Her body was scrawny light, bones sharp beneath thin fabric. As I carried her back through the alley into the store, a low thump rattled the metal door. I froze. "Who's there?" I shouted. Gun pointed at the door. A second thump, then a scraping sound. Metal on metal. They were testing it. I backed away, shoving the girl behind the cooler. "Stay down," I whispered. My finger tightened on the trigger. The door shuddered again, then silent. My radio squawked with static finally. Backup. Bless that or curse it depending on what came next. I turned to the girl. "You're safe now," I said, voice rough. "Help's coming." Her eyes met mine, but she looked past me at the darkened doorway, fear twisting her features. "They'll come," she said again, "and when they do—" Her words hung unfinished. I holstered my sidearm, would need both hands. I reached for my cuffs, my flashlight, my training. I'd done this 100 times. Extract the victim, gather evidence, chase leads, but this time the silence was different, thicker. The static in my radio wasn't just broken signal, it was the promise of being alone when the real predators returned. I fumbled for my phone's flashlight to send a beacon through the broken windows. Outside, the night stillness felt hollow, like someone had sucked the soul out of the world and left only skin. I squeezed the girl's shoulder. "Hold on," I said. "Davis has you." Behind me, the door groaned under a heavy force, like a fist pounding. The girl let out a soft sob. My heart seized. I drew a breath, shouldered forward, uprooting every ounce of calm I had left. "Evansville PD," I barked. "If you're inside, show yourself." Silence. Then a voice, low, mocking, slithered from the darkness. "We're inside." The concrete floor seemed to tilt beneath me. The girl clung to me, her warmth a small comfort. I swallowed bile, thinking of unfinished cases, lost partners, the families who never got closure. I thought of the radio's betrayal, my isolation, the weight of silence pressing down like lead. I raised my flashlight. The beam caught a shape rounding the freezer aisle, tall, hooded, faceless in the glare. I squared my shoulders, every muscle tight. "Come out with your hands up," I shouted. The figure stopped, head cocked. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. Then they stepped forward into the cracked light, and I saw the glint of a weapon. I fired once. The shot rang like thunder in a canyon. My ears rang, light flickered. The girl screamed. And then everything went black. I still remember how the night felt when the call came through. Like the air itself had gone cold, thinner somehow, as if the world had lost weight. I was parked behind the old Valley Mart off Meridian Road, finishing paperwork from a late domestic dispute that turned out to be nothing more than two neighbors arguing over a barking dog. My flashlight lay face down on the passenger seat, its beam flickering in time with the hum of the overhead street lamp. I leaned back, closed my eyes for a moment, and let the radio's static lull me toward sleep. Then the dispatcher's voice cut through, clipped and mechanical. "Unit 27, 911 call, silent line. Address is 421. West Oak apartment complex." Caller hung up before details. No further activity on line. Officer, respond and investigate. I snatched the flashlight, slammed the cruiser's door, and felt the kinetic jolt of adrenaline squeeze my chest. 20 years on the force taught me that silence on the other end of a 911 call almost always meant trouble. Sometimes serious. The dispatcher repeated the location. West Oak Apartments, Building C, ground floor, silent call, no other units available. There was a single beat of hesitation in her voice, as if she expected me to argue. I didn't. Instead, I responded, calm on the mic. "Copy that. Dispatch?" "I'm en route." The radio crackled in response, but no reassurance, no backup. I clicked off the mic. The drive over took 5 minutes, though the roads were empty. Moonlight dappled the pavement through sparse clouds, pooling in potholes that rattled my wheels. My eyes traced the neon sign of a 24-hour laundromat. The stench of industrial detergent hanging in the air, giving the night an antiseptic tang. At the entrance to West Oak, the breeze kicked up a dead leaf that danced across the faded asphalt. I steered around it, wondering how much life still clung to this place. The complex stood in 2 rows of faded beige stucco buildings. Flat roofs, barred windows, overgrown hedges that had gone feral. The yellowed security camera over the entrance looked down like a cataract blue eye, useless in the low light. I parked next to a row of empty carports, engine still running, flashlight ready in my right hand, sidearm snug in its holster. Exiting the cruiser, I closed the door as quietly as I could, but the hollow thunk echoed off the apartment walls. Gravel crunched underfoot. I headed toward Building C, passing vacant mailboxes whose slots stuck open, invitations for identity theft. At the glass-doored entrance, a keypad glowed faintly. I buzzed the code for maintenance access. Old habits die hard, and the lock clicked. The door swung inward, and the stale heat of the lobby hit me, carrying hints of damp carpet and cigarette smoke. Inside, the long corridor stretched ahead, terminated by a stairwell. Fluorescent lights flickered at intervals, casting pools of yellowing light that fought the gloom. Apartment numbers 401, 402, 403 passed on either side. The silence was absolute, broken only by the faint reverse echo of my own breathing. I pressed the palm of my hand to the wall to steady myself, then moved toward the door marked Ground Floor C3. The brass number was dull, nearly worn away. I squared my shoulders, raised my fist, and knocked 3 times. Soft, deliberate, knock, knock, knock. My voice found me before I could stop it. Evansville PD. Anyone inside? If you need help, open up. No response. I listened for the slightest hint of movement. Shuffling feet, muffled breath, the click of a lock. Nothing. I eased my hand to the knob. It turned under my glove without resistance. I flipped the flashlight beam across the threshold, illuminating a clutter of cardboard boxes and a narrow hallway leading deeper into the apartment. The foyer smelled stale, like a forgotten closet that's been sealed too long. I stepped inside, closing the door behind me. The lock clicked shut, deliberate. I flicked the flashlight over a shoe rack. 2 pairs of scuffed sneakers, one grown up, one child size, neatly lined up, laces untied. That simple order in the chaos of a silent apartment unnerved me. I advanced through the cramped entryway toward the living room. Discarded clothes lay in a heap across the floor. Jeans, a hospital gown, a child's pink shirt. The couch sagged under a thick blanket. My light caught the glossy surface of a television screen, black and silent, reflecting my flashlight like a void. I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Training told me to secure the perimeter, establish clear lines of sight. I pivoted, sweeping the beam over windows with heavy drapes drawn. Nothing visible. Then I heard it. A faint metallic creak, like a hinge under weight, coming from the bedroom down the hall. I pressed toward the sound, every sense alert. Halfway there, I passed the kitchen. Dishes piled in the sink, rotting food spilling out of a half-open fridge, a sink stained with what looked like rust and dried coffee grounds. The countertop held an overturned cereal bowl, wheat flakes scattered like brittle treasure. I smelled something coppery. Blood? I trained the beam on it, brownish-red streaks traced across the formica top. My stomach lurched. I aimed my light higher and saw grainy imprints on the corner of the countertop, palm prints, spattered with droplets. Someone had leaned there in pain, in fear. I clenched my jaw and continued to the bedroom doorway. The door hung ajar, framing a small, dim interior where the drapes were half drawn, letting a sliver of moonlight across a mattress on the floor. The mattress was bare except for blankets bunched at the foot. I readied my firearm and swept the beam inside. A figure lay face down on the bed. A man, medium build, wearing a dark hoodie smeared with dirt. His arm dangled over the edge, hand twitching slightly. I moved closer, but then realized the twitch wasn't a spasm. It was someone breathing shallowly. The man was alive, but unconscious, maybe injured. I knelt beside him, careful to keep the beam on any other potential threat. "Sir, Evansville PD," I said softly, tapping his shoulder. His head lolled to the side, pale, sweat-slicked, mouth parted. His eyes fluttered open, pupils dilated. Confusion mingled with relief. He tried to speak, but only a rasp came out. They said, don't come in." "Who's they?" I asked. His gaze flickered behind me, toward the hallway. I turned swiftly, nothing there but shadows. "Ma'am? Sir? Can you tell me what happened?" He stared at me, eyes glassy. "Please, find her," he whispered. "My daughter, she's—" His head dropped back, eyes closing. I fished my radio free, but again I got only static. I slapped the button. "Dispatch 27, victim located, request medics, over." Static. I cursed under my breath. I pressed my flashlight on his hoodie. The front zipper was pulled down halfway, revealing a lacy camisole beneath. A woman's garment, hers. He hadn't been the one to lie on the bed. Panic tightened my chest like a vice. I grabbed his jacket, flipped open a pocket. No ID, only a child's photograph. A little girl, blonde hair and pigtails, beaming in a pink dress at a birthday party. I swallowed hard, stowed the photo. I needed to find her before whoever, or whatever, left this man here came back. I eased off the bed, motioned for him to stay down. He nodded, shivering. The beam caught a door on the opposite side of the room, the bathroom. The hinges squeaked softly as it moved. I approached, gun raised, heart pounding. Every lesson in tactical entry flooding my mind. I flicked off safety and pushed the door open. The bathroom was small, its tile floor cracked and stained. The light fixture was broken. A single bulb flickered weakly, casting the room in a jaundiced glow. My beam swept over the sink. Half-empty bottles of prescription pills, gummy vitamins, a razor blade with dried residue. Then I glanced into the bathtub, shampoo bottles tangled among towels. A splash across the tile, bare footprints in what looked like dried blood. But then I noticed they were not prints but smears. Someone had wiped a hand across the surface in distress. I clenched my teeth. "Dispatch!" I yelled into the radio, but only static answered. I cursed and dashed out into the hallway. The man lay still on the bed. I offered a quick nod and sprinted toward the child's bedroom at the end of the corridor. The door was cracked. A lullaby toy lay abandoned in the threshold, music box half buried under a stray sock. I pushed the door. It swung outward with a groan. The room was pastel kitschy. Flowers painted on the walls, a canopy bed draped in ruffled linen, stuffed animals strewn in a semicircle on the floor. My beam caught a tiny shoe poking from under the bed. I knelt and shone the light beneath. The girl, face pale, eyes squeezed shut, clutching a faded teddy bear. She looked unconscious but breathing. Her hoodie was stained, sleeves torn. Bruises speckled her legs. I rolled her gently into my arms. Her eyes flickered open, huge, wet, searching. "Daddy?" she whispered. Her voice cracked. Blood pounded in my ears. I stood, chest tight, cradling her like a lifeline. She pressed her face against my shoulder, small body trembling. "They'll come," she said, voice tiny but certain. "They said if the cops find me, they'll kill Daddy." I froze. Behind me, the hallway lay empty, silent as a tomb. I glanced back at the man on the bed. He'd stirred, muttering something. I shone my light on him, sweat-drenched, helpless, tears streaking his face. "Sir," I said, tone low, "we're getting you both help." I turned, child against my chest, and strode back down the hallway. Every step felt heavier, my legs like concrete pillars. The walls closed in, the tepid smell of fear thick in the air. I cracked the front door. Daylight hadn't broken, but the sky had lightened enough that the cracked glass glowed steel gray. I emerged into the parking lot, the girl's weight a solid anchor against my chest. I shouted for medics, but no one came. Only the distant hum of a lone AC unit, a dog barking in the distance. The complex was deserted. I carried her to my cruiser, set her gently in the passenger seat. She clutched my uniforms, sleeve, eyes wide. I unstrapped her briefly to slip into the driver's seat, punched the siren switch. Its wail cut through the stillness like a scream, echoing off stucco walls. I opened the passenger door and slid her back in, then sped toward the hospital lights flickering on the horizon. As I drove, I kept glancing at her, pale, tear-streaked, too tired to cry. Against my chest, her heartbeat was a faint flutter. Beside me, my flashlight lay on the seat, its beam dancing against the window, illuminating the scars on her arms. I thought of the man I'd left on that bed, alone with his agony. I thought of how the silent radio felt like betrayal, how isolation had turned a routine call into a nightmare. My phone buzzed. A text from dispatch. Back up en route. Stay safe. Relief warred with guilt. I pressed the accelerator, siren off, lights still spinning. The road ahead was empty, stretching toward that thin line between what was and what might come. The girl leaned against me, eyelids fluttering. I spoke softly. You're safe now. I've got you. She looked up, tears glistening. Will they come back? She asked. I swallowed. They might, I said honestly, voice rough. But they won't find you tonight. She didn't answer. Her grip tightened on my sleeve. Outside, the sky peeled from gray to pale blue. The world was waking. But inside the cruiser, the darkness lingered. Silent, patient, waiting for us to slip up. The riot of fluorescent lights in my rearview mirror blurred as I pulled into the emergency bay at Memorial Hospital, siren still moaning its farewell into the pre-dawn air. I killed the engine, grabbed the girl's small hand, and wove us through the sliding doors before anyone could stop me. A pair of orderlies converged, arms outstretched, murmuring reassurances. I deposited her gently into their care, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead as she stared up at me with wide, fearful eyes. Behind me, the ambulance doors swung shut on the photograph I'd left on the seat. The little girl in her pink dress, smiling bright as summer. I'd clipped it to my badge holster before I climbed out of the cruiser. Now I let the orderlies take it, promising them I'd return with answers. I made my way to admit myself into the ER's reception corridor, heart still rattling against rib and sternum. My mind replaying those haunted words, "They'll kill Daddy." A nurse, clipboard in hand, glanced up as I approached. "Lieutenant Davis? You said you were bringing in a minor." Her tone was clinical but kind. I dropped my badge, photo face up, onto her desk. "She's stable, but frightened," I said. "I need a status update on her father, and whatever you know about that man in danger." She studied the photo, then tapped her screen. "Mr. Langston, Andrew Langston, arrived by private vehicle about 5 minutes ago. He was conscious, but deteriorating rapidly. They've prepped him for imaging. Suspected head trauma and dehydration." She looked up, eyes flicking toward the trauma bay doors. "The girl's in pediatrics. She's being evaluated for physical and psychological trauma. Child Services is on standby." I nodded. "What about security footage? That address, 421 West Oak, Building C. Do you have footage or witness statements we can access?" She flipped a page and scanned. "Security cameras are inoperable. Power outage 2 months ago, awaiting repair. No staff on duty overnight to witness. We only know what you brought in. I rubbed my jaw. All right, I'll coordinate with detectives. Keep me posted. I snatched the photo back. The edges were already curling where it had soaked up too much fluorescent light. I tucked it into my breast pocket and headed back into the corridor, radio clipped tight against my hip. My shift was far from over. By the time I reached the squad room, the first hint of sun was dissolving the night sky into bruised purples and grays. Detectives Palmer and Reyes were already there, rifles of paper and files spread across the conference table. Palmer looked up, jaw tight. Davis, we got word the girl's father is stable. They found her in a shallow closet behind the mattress in C3. Says her name's Emily. They're guarding her now. I sank into a chair. Emily, 4 years old by her birth certificate, no school records, no pediatrician. I shoved the photo onto the files. And Langston? He's her dad? Reyes rubbed his temples. He claims he found her in the rain outside a warehouse on Blue River Parkway 2 nights ago. Then she disappeared. He went looking, got ambushed, apparently by 2 men with masks. They beat him, shoved him into his own apartment, told him not to call the cops. She's been hidden there ever since. This morning he got loose, stumbled in, and passed out. Palmer thumbed through a folder. We've got no matches on Langston, no prior offenses, no missing child reports under his name. The warehouse footage is blank. Security cameras were looped that night. Whoever's behind this knew exactly which feeds to spoof. I exhaled. So we're dealing with professionals. I looked at the overhead lights buzzing above us. People who abduct 4-year-olds, extort fathers, manipulate surveillance, probably trafficking, maybe ransom. And they're smart enough to anticipate a silent alarm response, isolate the victim, and target the father. Emily's bruises align with that. Pinches, forceful grabs, abdomen trauma consistent with slams against walls. They use the apartment like a cell. Reyes looked grim. We need to trace that warehouse. Blue River Parkway is long. No precise location, no witnesses, no streetlights. I rubbed my face. The weariness that had lodged in my shoulders during that first entry at Quick Stop now lodged into my bones. We go door to door. We call in every available unit to canvass businesses along the parkway between 6th and 9th. We pull tile maps, utility records. Where have they cut power? We find where they're looping cameras, we find the source feed. I sat up straighter. Davis has a plan. Hours later, I was back outside, the sky finally bleeding stripes of deep blue. I stood beside my cruiser, cajoling a trembling Emily into the passenger seat again. She clutched her teddy bear tighter than ever, thumb in mouth, eyes big and red-rimmed. Detective Reyes walked up, clipboard in hand. Lieutenant, we've got a lead on that warehouse. It's an abandoned textile mill at 2234 Blue River Parkway. Twice we've gotten false alarms there. Vagrants, once a meth fight. But every single time the power circuit burned out on the security system right before. Now we've traced the feed to the transformer. It's been rewired. I unlocked the doors. Get her comfortable, I'm driving us there. Reyes hesitated. You sure? I glanced down at Emily. She trusts me. I sounded firmer than I felt. That wasn't just paternal instinct talking, it was professional code. I opened the door for him. Get the team ready, we're hitting it now. The mill loomed like a beast at the outskirts of town. Looming brick walls, scorched window frames, vines thick as ropes strangling the mortar. We parked 30 yards from the side entrance. The road cracked and weed-choked. My flashlight cut through the gloom, revealing broken glass and bent steel. I motioned Reyes forward, pantomimed for him to circle left while I'd go right. Emily huddled in the back, tiny head against the seat. "Stay here," I murmured through the rearview mirror. Her thumb slipped from her mouth. She looked at me with solemn little nod. My throat tightened. I slammed the door and tossed the radio to Reyes. "On channel 2. Ready?" He clicked it on. I gave him a thumbs up and sprinted toward a collapsed side door. The steel frame was jagged, sharp enough to cut flesh. I edged inside, flashlight scanning broken machinery and stained concrete floors. The air was thick with mold, rust, and stale perspiration. I cringed at the sound of dripping water in the darkness, like pulses in a corpse's veins. Reyes's voice crackled in my ear. "We've got 2 zones, east and west wings. Emily's secure, no sign of movement yet. You?" I crept forward toward an open corridor. The beam landed on a stack of crates stamped Old Mill Company-1889. Layers of dust coated them except where footprints marked a recent path. I followed the prints to a kinked shaft leading down toward the sublevel. The rumble of a generator echoed somewhere below, a menacing heartbeat in the belly of this place. I flicked the mic. "Detectives, I'm heading down. West corridor appears to have new wiring. Keep watch." No response. Radios again. I cursed. I should have insisted on a second set. But it was too late. I pressed my back against the wall, slid through the opening, my boots crunching gravel and debris. The shaft opened into a warehouse floor that had been sectioned with chain-link fencing, like cages lining a slaughterhouse, each pen dark and ominous. I passed empty cells with deep scuffs on the concrete. Some still held tattered blankets, child-sized shoes, a single shoe lying abandoned in the corner. My stomach twisted. I swept the beam across a nicked folding table where half-empty water bottles lay, the caps twisted off and discarded. Next to it, a child scribbling on a piece of cardboard. "I want Daddy." The letters were shaky, but unmistakable. Someone inside this hell had tried to reach out. Footsteps. I snapped around, gun raised. No one. My flashlight caught a movement beyond the fence. Torn clothing draped over a support beam, swinging like a ragged flag. I edged closer, hand on the holster, mind racing. I needed to find them, employers of this terror. And I needed to get Emily out before they'd discovered her flight. I heard the generator's hum surge, change pitch. The lights overhead flickered for an instant, then died, plunging the sublevel into near darkness. My flashlight became the only source of sight, its beam slicing through the gloom like a lifeline. I ripped out my phone, hit the flashlight app, then discarded it, its beam too weak. I steadied my service light, pressed forward along the fence. A faint whimper echoed, childlike. I froze. Then a muffled cry. A teenager's voice, frightened. My blood sang in my ears. I dropped to one knee and swept under the chain link. 2 small hands reached out from the shadows, the fingers dirty and trembling. I braced my flashlight to peer closer. "Emily?" I whispered. But it wasn't her. This was older, maybe 10, hoodie too big, the bottom hem ripped. She murmured, "Help me, please." I stood. "Stay there," I said, voice low. I jacked the fence's top rail and tensed. "Anybody else here? Make yourselves known." "Evansville PD." My words hung unanswered. The smell here was worse, faintly metallic, cloying, like fear mixed with decay. Footsteps above, on the grated catwalk. I swept the beam upward. A figure in dark coveralls with a hood over his head, back turned. He clutched a crowbar. I cursed silently. I wasn't alone, and whoever he was had the jump on me by height and vantage. I snapped off my light and leapt backward, disorienting the man above. The coveralls rustled. A heavy object clanged against metal. I heard a thunk as a crowbar struck the walkway's grating and bounced off. I fired one warning shot into the ceiling. Steel ricocheted down like hail. The man shouted, scrambled away. I pounded up the stairs. Reyes's voice crackled back. "Lieutenant, what's your status?" "Hostile present," I hissed, racing up the catwalk. "2 juveniles in West Penn. Suspect above with weapon. Respond now." My boots pounded the metal grate. I burst onto the walkway into an open loft where the man whirled, face still hidden. The low light caught the edge of a mask, ornate, like a carnival devil. He raised the crowbar to strike. I leveled my weapon. "Drop it!" My voice echoed through the rafters. He hesitated, foot slipping. Then he charged. I fired again, aimed for the hip. The shot cracked loud, the man jerked, staggered, dropped the bar. He crumpled into the cage of crates below with a thud that rattled my bones. I slid over the guardrail, landed in a crouch. The kids were pressed against the fence, wide-eyed. I unlocked the cage door and ushered them out. Seconds later, Reyes and 2 officers descended, guns drawn, flashlights blazing. They cuffed the man and guided him up. I turned back to the cage. 2 more children huddled at the far end, eyes shimmering with relief. I lifted each to my shoulder. Their small bodies were brittle with terror. When I placed the last child into Reyes's arms, I spotted Emily's teddy bear taped to a beam, the remnants of her fear left behind like an offering. I climbed back up the catwalk, more shaking than from the shot itself, and stood above the carnage. The mill's generator sputtered back to life, lights flickering overhead in a frantic Morse code. I pulled out my radio. "All clear, subject secure. We need paramedics and CPS now." I took a moment to breathe, chest heaving. Below me, the half-light revealed the hulking shapes of the cages and the broken dreams inside them. The mill exhaled its final breath, a low groan as if it recognized its own death warrant. I looked at my hands, still trembling despite the thick gloves. I closed my eyes, seeing the lean frame of the masked man flinch where he lay cuffed, the children's faces pressed into their rescuers' uniforms, Emily's little form wrapped in a blanket as she watched me from the bay doors. The generator coughed and died. Darkness swallowed the sublevel once more. And I realized that even in the light, some places never let go of their shadows. I climbed out of the mill into the cool dawn. The squad cars formed a line behind me, lights winking off in daylight. I approached my cruiser, opened the door, and found the radio working again, static then clear. "Dispatch 27. We've secured the site. Multiple juveniles rescued. 1 suspect in custody. Requesting full forensic detail and medical teams." "Copy that, Lieutenant," came the reply. And for the first time in hours, I felt a sliver of relief. I looked back at the mill's vacant windows, once eyes that watched terror unfold, now blind. I let out a long breath, shoved my hands into my pockets. In the passenger seat, Emily's teddy bear lay waiting. I slid in behind the wheel. "Let's get these kids somewhere safe," I said softly. The engine fired. As the cruiser rolled away, I checked the rearview mirror. There she was, tiny head poking out, sleepy eyes meeting mine. She offered a small nod, as if she understood everything, as if she knew this was only a reprieve. Ahead, the road stretched straight and endless. Behind me, the mill's silhouette shrank into the gathering light. I drove on, hands steady, heart heavy, aware that some nights don't end with morning, and that I would carry this one, its darkness, its quiet terror, inside me for every shift to come. The sky had barely cleared when I rolled back onto the dark stretch of Blue River Parkway, headlights slicing thin ribbons of yellow through morning mist. My cruiser's engine idled low, betraying my impatience more than any words could. Beside me, Emily slept. head lolling against the window, a small hand clutching the hem of my uniform jacket. I parked under a lone oak, its branches skeletal against the pale sky, and killed the engine. The hush of dawn pressed against the glass, fragile and expectant. I eased the door open, careful not to wake her, and stepped onto the pavement. The air was colder than I'd expected, heavy with dew and the sharp tang of river in the distance. I laid a hand on the cruiser's roof and exhaled, tasting it. The memory of the mill's darkness still clung to me. The flicker of the generator, the metallic scent of fear, the children's wide eyes in the cages. I shook my head, as though to dislodge the images, but they remained, lodged behind my eyelids. Across from me, the boarded-up windows of the mill loomed silent. Shadows pooled where the broken windows had been. They seemed to stir, waiting. I should have stayed with Emily, taken her to the station, found a child advocate, done the paperwork and reports that would keep her safe. But I couldn't shake the sense that something was still unresolved inside that building. A final whisper of those cages, the echo of the madman's mask, and the unseen accomplices who had run these operations for weeks, maybe months. I keyed the mic. "Dispatch, Lieutenant Davis, I'm heading back to the mill. Need to oversee evidence collection. Confirm unit coverage for Emily?" "Static, then." "Copy, Lieutenant." "She's in protective custody at Precinct. Unit 4 will transport her to Safe House. Be advised, detectives are en route to secure the scene." I nodded to empty air. "Understood." I flicked the mic off and walked toward the mill's entrance, each footfall measured on the cracked asphalt. The building's front door was chained, padlock rusted but intact. I undid it, the metal clicking open sound sharp in the still morning air. Inside, the corridor was cold, stale as a coffin. I drew my flashlight and pushed forward. Detective Reyes met me just inside the door, coat collar turned up against the chill. His face was drawn, eyes ringed with exhaustion. "Lieutenant," he said quietly, nodding. "They've started tagging. Forensics is in the West Wing. No sign of recent disturbance since we cleared them out." I scanned the corridor. Footprints crusted with dust, the sheen of sweat still on the walls from hours before. I ran a gloved hand along the peeling paint. "How many victims?" He consulted his notes. 14 confirmed. Ages 4 to 17. 2 unaccounted for. We suspect they were moved. We've got blood spatter patterns in cells 3, 7, and 12. They're bagging everything. Clothing, blankets, hair samples. I closed my eyes for a moment, seeing Emily's tiny frame in my arms. 4-year-olds shouldn't be in such places. The thought tightened my throat. I steadied myself against the wall. We'll need full walkthroughs with family liaisons. Child Services has to prepare for trauma counseling. And I want surveillance specialists. If anyone tampered with the cameras, they'll know the exact manipulation points. Reyes nodded. "Already on it. They're working with tech to recover data logs. But this building's old. Wiring is as tangled as Mesopotamian ruins." I sighed. "All right, I'm heading to the West Wing." I turned and passed deeper into the mill's bowels, the beam of my flashlight cutting through dust motes like tiny specters. The chain-link cages loomed on my left, now empty except for discarded toys and scraps of clothing. A sudden draft stirred a length of plastic sheeting. It snapped against metal piping, a hollow clap that sent a shiver down my spine. I reached out to steady it, brushing away a tangle of spiderwebs. The West Wing's floor was slick with the residue of yesterday's rain, water trickling in from cracks above. Forensics officers in white suits moved methodically, dusting for prints and labeling evidence markers with precise care. One lifted a small torn piece of cloth from a grated drain. Another photographed a smear of blood that led to a locked utility closet. I knelt beside the closet, shining my light through the bars of its ventilated door. Inside, a single wooden crate rested on a metal shelf, its corners chipped. I examined the padlock on the crate. Fresh, no rust. The chain's links shone against a backdrop of fluorescent glare. I exchanged a look with the tech specialist. He tapped the lock with a small pick. It clicked open. The crate lid groaned as it swung back, and inside lay a stack of ID photos, each laminated and stamped with false dates. Children who had vanished from across the state. Emergency shelter boards, unauthenticated hospital forms, the names of social workers who didn't exist. I swallowed. They kept dossiers, I said, voice tight. This isn't just kidnapping, it's organized. They intended to traffic them, sell their identities. The specialist looked pale. We've found similar records in 2 other sites. They're connected. I rose, flashlight beam slicing upward. Then we go to the source, I said, and felt the weight of every life on that stack press against my conscience. We dig until we find who's orchestrating this. Hours later, back at the precinct, I sat behind my desk piled with reports. Handwritten statements from rescued victims, chain of custody logs for evidence, maps marking the mill and other known sites. My pen hovered over a blank page. I needed a plan, raids, warrants, a coordinated strike across multiple locations. But the sun was high, and my mind fogged from too many hours awake, too many scenes of horror. I closed my eyes, rubbing my temples. The jingling of keys at the door drew my attention. Detective Palmer entered, cup of coffee in hand, eyes bright for the first time since dawn. "Lieutenant, you need to see this." He dropped a folder on my desk. The coffee cup rattled into the pile. Inside, a single photo. An address label from the crate's roster, 116 Maple Avenue, Clayton. A nondescript house in the suburbs, its windows shuttered. A single flowering bush by the front steps. In the corner of the image, a set of footprints, adult male, leading to the back door. I stared. Clayton was 2 counties away, within a ring of sites investigators had flagged weeks ago. My pulse quickened. When was this taken? Palmer checked his watch. About 10 minutes ago. Surveillance cams on the precinct building caught a man arriving at that address. No car. Walked from the bus stop down the block, face hidden by a cap. I grabbed my jacket. "Get me detectives from Clayton PD. I'm taking a team there now." I drove through midday traffic toward Clayton in the unmarked SUV, siren silent. Behind me, a convoy of marked cars followed, lights off but engines ready. Emily was safe at the shelter. She'd asked for drawing paper and crayons, and the child advocate reported she'd painted rainbows, bright, defiant arcs against black paper. That image stayed with me as we turned onto Maple Avenue, a row of well-kept lawns and painted fences. Neighbors hung laundry on clotheslines. Children's drawings were taped to front doors. I parked a block away, tossed my jacket to my sergeant, and approached on foot. Muffled voices drifted from the house. A television playing behind closed blinds, the muffled clink of dishes. I tapped my earpiece. "Davis to 14th, position yourself west of the house. On my signal, we move in." The team fanned out. 2 officers on the east side, 2 on the north. I crouched behind a mailbox, radio in hand. Heart thundering. This was the moment that would unravel the network, if we got it right. If we failed, more children could vanish. I raised my hand, a clenched fist, meaning, "Prepare." The sergeant nodded. I tapped twice, "Go." Radios clicked on. We converged on the back door, Sergeant Harper kicking it in with one swift boot. The door flew inward. Officers spilled into a dim kitchen, guns high. I followed, flashlight and sidearm at the ready. The kitchen was spotless. Dinner dishes cleaned, counters wiped, a vase of fresh flowers on the table. I swept to the hallway and encountered a frightened woman in her late 30s, hands raised. She wore jeans and a pink sweatshirt. Clothes innocent and domestic. Her eyes were wide with surprise. "Police!" I shouted. "Hands where we can see them!" She stammered. "Officer, oh God, officer, I'm sorry, I didn't know." I cuffed her swiftly. "Ma'am, you're under arrest. Step aside." She sobbed as we guided her into the living room. Behind her, the hallway led to a closed door. I motioned. 2 officers cracked it open. Beyond lay a small bedroom painted pale yellow. A single bed with rumpled sheets. On the floor lay a teddy bear, the same model Emily had had. A child's shoe peeked from under the bed. My flashlight fell on a handprint smudged on the wall, tiny, 5 fingers. I stepped forward, pronouncing each word. "Evansville PD, come out now, with your hands up." Silence. I swallowed uneasy. The room felt too quiet, as if holding its breath. I nudged the door wider. Inside, the closet door was ajar. My beam cut through the gloom, a small body curled inside. I recognized Emily's pink sweatshirt. My knees buckled, and I lunged forward, yanking the child free. She blinked up at me, eyes wet, lips trembling. I pressed her to my chest. "It's okay, Emily, I've got you." A scuffle behind me. The sergeant dragging a man out of the bathroom, covered in a dark sweatshirt, face pale, lips quivering. He spat curses. "You'll never stop them. I did what I had to do to feed my kids." Blood dripped from a cut on his forehead, glinting in the flashlight. I glanced at the mother, still cuffed on the bed. "You, what is this?" My voice was a growl. She trembled. "He said I had to hold them until he said. I was scared. I thought he was going to kill me." I nodded at the sergeant. "Lock her up, and him." The man swung at me, but an officer pushed him back. He collapsed on the floor, sobbing. I set Emily on the bed, enveloped but safe. She curled around her bear, eyes fixed on me. I knelt to her level. "You're safe now," I said gently. "I promise." Behind me, the precinct team confiscated phones, computers, faded brochures with names crossed out. A rotating roster of victims. The network was bigger than we'd imagined. But at least here, tonight, one more child was free. As daylight warmed the room, I took a steadying breath. The final raids were scheduled for tomorrow, sites in 2 more counties. We were closing in on the bosses. I placed a hand on Emily's shoulder. She looked up, face small but steady. "Officer Davis," she whispered. "Will they come back?" I swallowed hard. "No," I said, my voice cracked, unsteady. "Not tonight." She nodded, eyes closing. I rose, holstered my weapon, and stepped outside. The morning sun hit my back, the warmth a sharp contrast to the chill in my veins. I locked eyes with the sergeant. He gave a curt nod. I tightened my collar, squared my shoulders, and looked back at the house on Maple Avenue. Justice was far from done. But for now, in this quiet suburb, a little girl drew rainbows on black paper, and in her art, I saw hope. I crawled back into the cruiser long after sunset, hands trembling on the wheel. The precinct lights faded in my rear view as I headed toward the river docks, another potential hub in this network. Emily was safe in the foster home's care. Her tiny form replayed on my mind like a fragile echo. My radio crackled, a single channel open. "Lieutenant? ETA on docks?" Reyes's voice was hoarse. I swallowed dry and responded, 5 minutes. The road curved past abandoned warehouses, their graffiti-scarred walls looming under flickering sodium lamps. The river's dark ribbon glistened to my right, boats moored like sleeping beasts. I parked under a crane's skeletal silhouette, engine off, flashlight and pistol already in hand. My vest felt heavier than any badge. Every rescued child, every missing parent, the weight of unseen predators all tethered to my shoulders. I stepped onto the boarding platform. The wood groaned under my boots. A thin mist rose from the water, curling around the pilings like ghostly fingers. Somewhere downstream, a fish slipped beneath the surface with a faint plunk. I keyed my mic. Teams Bravo and Charlie converge on Sector 7. I'm checking the west side. Static, then. Copy, Lieutenant. I followed the tracks of a service cart toward a row of refrigerated barges. Their metal hulls glinted in the flashlight's beam, pitted with rust and algae. I tapped the side of the nearest barge. No response. I circled to its stern, where a hatch lay half open, hinges corroded. Leaning in, I heard muffled sobs, soft, frightened, so small they almost blended into the hum of the river. I drew my weapon and ducked beneath the hatch. The barge's hold was narrower than expected, the ceiling low. Water dripped from overhead pipes, plinking on metal crates. I traced the sound to a dark corner, where blankets and cardboard formed a flimsy bedroll. There, huddled against a crate, was a boy, maybe 7, thin as autumn's last leaf, eyes rimmed red. He flinched at my light. "Easy," I said softly, holstering my weapon. "I'm with the police. You're safe." His lip trembled. He buried his face deeper into his knees. His clothes were damp. Bruises freckled his arms and back. I knelt beside him. "What's your name, son?" He mumbled something. "Jacob," I thought. Not Emily's name, but another. My breath caught. This network ran deep. I reached out, offering my hand. He hesitated, then took it. His fingers were ice. "Let's get you out," I said, voice thick. I hoisted him over my shoulder. His head lolled, once then settled. I crawled back through the hatch, emerging into the night air. Behind me, the river's hush seemed to amplify the boy's soft sobs. I carried him toward my cruiser, flashlight dancing across the deck. 2 officers materialized from the shadows, uniforms dark. "Got one," I said. "Male, juvenile, follow-up?" They nodded. "Sector's clear, no other signs." Their radio chirped. "Lieutenant, a female juvenile in Sector 5, ETA 2 minutes. I exhaled, nodding. "Copy." My heart pounded. Sector 5 would be further west, near the old grain elevator. This was a network stretching across docks, warehouses, even suburban homes. A hive of darkness feeding on children's lives. Inside the cruiser, I laid Jacob on the folded rear bench, blanket waiting. He clung to my jacket, eyelids heavy. I buckled him in, then slid into the driver's seat. "Hold tight," I told him. "We're almost done." The engine roared to life. I navigated the narrow roads between piers, every shadow a threat. My flashlight sat on the dash, beam still alive, shelf of stars overhead fading as dawn approached. In my peripheral vision, Jacob's eyes tracked me, tiny and wide. I caught his gaze in the mirror. "You're safe now," I whispered. He nodded slightly, clutching the blanket tight. We reached the grain elevator, a hulking structure of corrugated steel and ancient catwalks. Officers were already breaching side doors, flashlights stabbing into interior voids. I parked low, gun out before I even cut the engine. Jacob's small voice came, hoarse. "More kids." I swallowed hard. "Maybe a few," I admitted. "But we'll get them all." I lifted him again. How many times today had I carried another child from darkness into light? And moved toward the open doorway. The elevator's mouth yawned, stale wind exhaling dust and mildew. Up ahead, I could see movement, feet slipping across metal grating, laughter low and cruel. My flashlight found 3 silhouettes, older teens, ragged clothes, weapons too heavy for their arms. They spun, surprised. "Hands up!" I yelled, stepping between them and the boy. Their eyes widened, adrenaline surging. One lunged. I sidestepped, firing once into the air. The shot cracked. All 3 froze. The boy pressed his face into my side, trembling. Backup thundered through the entrance. Boots and voices. Commands in low urgency. The teens surrendered quickly under flashlights and authoritative yells. No resistance beyond fear. One officer scooped Jacob from my grasp. I holstered and surveyed the cavernous room. Piles of crates, cobwebbed rails overhead. Dark corners where desperate people had hidden before me tonight. I radioed dispatch. Sector 5, cleared. 3 suspects in custody, 1 juvenile rescued. All units return to base for debrief. The boy looked up at me, tears brimming. "Thank you, officer." His voice was a whisper lost beneath the clamor of officers securing evidence. I crouched, meeting his gaze. "You did good," I said, voice rough. "Just hang on." He nodded, eyes closing as exhaustion overtook him. I stood, shoulders heavy, and surveyed the scene. Dawn's first light crept through high windows, illuminating the long shadows cast by crates and cages. A uniformed child services worker approached, clipboard ready. She knelt beside Jacob, whispered words I couldn't hear. He offered a small, tired smile. I stepped back, feeling the story's threads unravel at last. Labyrinthine routes, hidden cages, suburban fronts, waterfront hells. All leading back to one question: how many more? I holstered my flashlight, turned toward the approaching line of officers, and realized I'd been out here too long. My bones ached, my thoughts blurred. But in the midst of it all, I felt the weight of lives saved press against my soul, a burden I'd carry home. I reached into my breast pocket and touched the laminated photo of Emily in her pink dress. She was safe, tonight anyway. I exhaled, the river's mist settling on my skin. Then I raised my gaze to the grain elevator's steel ribs, stark against the pale sky. Somewhere inside, more cages waited. But I had my orders: find them. And so I stepped forward, boots on metal grating, flashlight tapping the dark, one officer against a world of shadows, determined to bring every hidden child back into the light. I moved through the swirling twilight where dockside fog met the drone of distant traffic, every step echoing against hulking cargo cranes that loomed like silent sentinels. My flashlight cut arcs through the mist as I crossed the cracked concrete, each beam revealing long-forgotten rail tracks and oil stains pooled like spilled ink. The river lay unseen beyond a rusted railing, its muted roar a constant reminder that secrets sank deep into these waters. I shouldered my gear tighter, feeling the weight of my sidearm, the layered protective vest, the radio humming against my hip. I'd already carried too many children away from darkness tonight. Yet, somewhere in the belly of this dock, gangs of oppressors still prowled, keeping new cages for fresh prey. I tapped my earpiece. "Bravo team, you copy?" A crackle replied. "Sector 7 is clear. No movement near North Crane. Proceeding to meet on my way," I cut in softly. I turned north, boots crunching on debris. Splintered wood, twisted wire, shards of broken bottles. A lone seagull cried overhead, its voice eerie in the hush. I stopped at a forklift parked beside a stack of shipping containers, its engine cold. The ground here was uneven, littered with discarded pallets. I swept my light along the container walls. Graffiti tags warning, "Keep out," scratched onto corroded steel. Next to them, fresh footprints led under a container that had been slightly pried up, just enough for a small child's body to slip beneath. I dropped to one knee, shone the beam into the shadowed gap and saw a shoelace peeking out. Pink fabric, patterned with cartoon animals. My heart hammered. I twisted my body on the asphalt, back tight against the container wall. I keyed the mic. Hold position. Juvenile location, underneath container 5x4. Send Delta in with me. No Delta available, came the reply. We're spread too thin. My jaw clenched. Then finish clearing your sector, I'm going in alone. The voice on the radio paused, then, copy. You have 1 unit on the way, ETA 60 seconds. I exhaled, reached for my knife and pried the container further. The metal groaned, sending tremors through my chest. Beneath, I could see a motionless figure curled in a fetal position, body shaking. I slid my flashlight underneath. A girl, no more than 6, eyes squeezed shut, tears streaking dust from her cheeks. She was wearing a frozen pink jacket zipped to her chin, knees pressed against her chest. Bruises marred her legs. I heard her soft sobs echo in the narrow cavern beneath steel. I carefully slid the container further, creating enough space to slip my arm through. The girl's hands flew to my wrist with surprising strength. "Don't leave me," she moaned, voice raw. I murmured, "I won't." I eased her toward me, back arched to keep my spine aligned under the weight of the metal above. Blood pounded in my ears as I pulled her out, her legs scraping my forearm. I cradled her against my vest as I righted the container with a grunt, sealing the gap behind me. "Lieutenant, do you copy?" Reyes's voice crackled, distant. "We've got your 6, east side." I nodded to myself, then turned toward the path of lights approaching across the yard. Behind me, the container's shadow stretched long across the tracks, swallowing the footprints that had betrayed her hiding spot. I carried her toward the swelling circle of flashlight beams and uniformed figures. A corporal took the girl from my arms and began checking her for injuries. I stepped back into the haze, scanning the horizon where warehouses formed a jagged skyline. Somewhere beyond those walls, more penkeepers waited. The fog curled around me, cold as a grave. I rubbed the back of my neck, sweat slick despite the chill. "Lieutenant," a voice said at my elbow, Detective Palmer, his face grim. "We've identified several calls tracing back to a dispatch spoof at the docks. They hijacked the emergency system, rerouted patrols to false alarms, and funneled us away from these children." His words felt like blows. "This whole network, it's been orchestrated to keep us chasing ghosts while they moved kids from one holding site to another." I closed my eyes. 12 arrests tonight, 7 children rescued. Yet for every child we freed, another might remain hidden under steel, behind locked doors, or buried in the cold current of the river. I patted the pistol's grip and drew in a breath that tasted of oil and damp earth. "They know our patterns now," I said. "They know exactly when and where we'll strike." I unfolded a map Palmer handed me, pins marking sites, the mill, the apartments, warehouses, docks. More still unmarked. Clark Street lofts, an old cannery off 14th, the abandoned power station in Benton County. "We need proactive teams on every known route," I continued, voice raw. "Nobody leaves this county unscanned. We bring light to every shadow." Palmer nodded, pinching the bridge of his nose. "I'll get the task force assembled. Federal partners want to step in, but they need our intel." I glanced at the girl under the blankets in the corporal's squad car, blank eyes, pain etched deep. My chest tightened. "Tell him to bring every unit and every asset. We're not finishing this tonight." He turned away to relay orders. I stood alone in the mist, the weight of every child's terror settling in my shoulders. Then, before I could second guess, I reached for my radio once more. "Dispatch," I called, voice steady. "Lieutenant Davis, I'm initiating Operation Dawn Strike. All available units to your posts. This ends tonight." Static crackled, then the familiar voice. "Copy, Lieutenant." I sealed the mic, then looked west, where the river fed into the horizon, and felt the bleak thrill of the hunt settle in. My boots pressed into mud as I stepped forward, flashlight raised. In that beam lay every hidden secret, every locked cage waiting to be unlocked, and I would find them all. Behind me, the mist shifted, revealing the grim outline of a barge's prow yanked free from its moorings, drifting, waiting, hungry. I paused, heart hammering. Somewhere within its hold, more victims lay silent, and as my radio barked orders and boots thundered into motion around me, I realized the darkness wasn't just around me. It was inside me now, fueling a vow I'd burn into my soul. They would not escape justice. I ease out of the station lot into the rain-slicked streets just after midnight, wipers scraping steadily as the county lights blur into a dull gray smear. My uniform feels heavier tonight, soaked through where the collar meets my neck, and every bead of moisture that trickles down my face carries with it that nagging tension I can't shake. I've done this shift hundreds of times. Watch the speedometer creep past 30, check the mirror for headlights that never come, tap the steering wheel to the rhythm of my own heartbeat. But tonight, something in the air feels different, thicker, charged. My breath fogs the inside of the window and then vanishes, swallowed by the endless stretch of pavement and dark tree line that flanks both sides of the road. When the call came over the radio, 1034, suspicious vehicle on County Road 12, no plates, door open, I was 3 miles away and already threading between streetlights that sputter and die like someone pulling the plug on a string of lamps. I flicked the overhead switch and watched the cruiser's red and blue strobe carve jagged patterns across the trees. Hornet-like, the flickering lights buzz in my vision. I know the protocol. Code 6, exit with flashlight in one hand on holster, eyes scanning every shadow as if the gloom could hold 100 secrets. I kill the motor 3 car lengths up, the engine's rumble fading into the hush of rain on asphalt. I step onto the shoulder, gravel crunching underfoot, and feel that familiar pit in my gut widen. The grass at the edge of the pavement is flattened in an arc the length of a car. I raise my light, wide beam cutting through sheets of rain, and there it sits, an unmarked 4-door sedan, dull white, now streaked with mud. The driver's door yawns open as if inviting me in, but nothing inside moves. No one's behind the wheel, no foot clamped on a brake pedal, just the echo of my own breathing and that stench, a fetid, sour note that hits me hard in the throat, like something died in there days ago. "Dispatch, 1034 on scene." I speak into the mic, clipped at my shoulder, voice low and steady despite the tremor I feel in my fingertips. "Suspicious vehicle, no plates, 1 door open. Requesting K9 and backup." I hear the faint crackle of acknowledgement. Good. I imagine the dog's nose scouring every square inch, finding what or who tried to vanish. I step forward, every muscle tense. My boots sink slightly into the damp earth, and I fight the urge to holler for whoever's inside. Protocol says clear the car slowly, methodically. I run my light around the front bumper, up to the hood where raindrops form into rivulets that slide into the grill. I approach the open door. Rain drips from the frame onto the passenger seat. I shine my light inside, tissues and paper towels matted into sticky clumps, deep crimson where blood soaked through. My stomach twists. I clamp my jaw and tell myself to focus. Training overcomes revulsion. A snap of twig, sharp in the silence, flings me to my left. I pivot, flashlight swinging in a tight arc. Trees loom just beyond the grass line, black trunks and limbs like crooked fingers. I call out, "Show yourself. Are you hurt in there?" My words vanish into the darkness, swallowed by the rain and the endless hiss of static from dispatch. No response. Only the soft tumble of my breathing, ragged. Swallowing bile, I return to the car. With gloves on, I peel back a wad of towels from the rear bench. Damp paper droplets fall to the floor. Then I feel it. The shape beneath, rigid and heavy. I hesitate, then pry it loose. Slowly, I unwrap, fingers numb, revealing a hand severed at the wrist, curled as if frozen in mid-grasp. Tendons glisten, dark red. The skin, pallid where dried, creases around knuckles. It takes me an instant to register what I'm staring at before my mind recoils. I nearly drop it. My glove catches a smear of slick blood. I clamp a hand over my mouth to stifle a gasp, forcing myself back to action. Dispatch, possible homicide. Package and evidence. Need homicide and CSI, I grind out. Every syllable tastes like rust. I set the hand gently on the back seat and step back, raising the light to sweep the tree line again. Heart hammering. Shallow breaths hissing through clenched teeth. No footprints in the mud. No blood trailing into the woods. Nothing but rain drumming on leaves. Backup arrives, 2 cruisers with spotlights trained on the scene. I watch tires bite into the grass, headlights stabbing at the tree line. A K9 unit pulls up, the German Shepherd's cage rattling as the dog strains against its leash. I brief the team. No plates, stolen vehicle from Shelby County, tissues soaked in blood, and the hand. We follow procedure, canvass the perimeter in wide arcs. Axel tromps into the underbrush, nose working, tail stiff. Minutes crawl into hours. He finds nothing. No scent, no discarded gloves, no drag marks. As I stand there, rain soaking through my jacket, I feel overwhelmed by the absolute lack of clues. Whoever dumped that hand wanted it found, or maybe they just wanted the investigation started, but then they vanished completely. The dawn light bleeds pale orange through ragged clouds by the time we call it quits. The car is towed. Evidence bags locked tight. I sign off reports, shake hands with CSI, stare at the cruiser as if it's a puzzle piece missing its counterpart. I drive off without headlights, following the county road home, adrenaline draining. My reflection in the rearview mirror is a stranger, hollow eyes, unshaven jaw. The static between dispatch calls still rings in my ears. That night, I'm haunted by the echo of steps in the woods. In bed, every creak sends my pulse racing. I imagine someone peeking through the blinds, then slipping away. At 2:03 a.m., I'm wide awake, chasing ghosts in my mind. Sleep feels like a luxury I can't afford. 2 nights later, another call. Silent alarm at the closed convenience store on Highway 9. Door chime buzzing, cameras rolling empty aisles. I arrive to see all lights flashing. The glass panel by the register shattered. Pistol in hand, leather grips slick. I clear the front section, soda coolers humming, chips neatly stacked. No perp. I trace the broken glass back to a rear exit and open it onto a back alley littered with rain-soaked cardboard. No footprints. Just a few scattered soda boxes crushed under weight. I radio it in. Alarm false, no suspect, but destruction of property. Request patrol check area. Then I wait in my cruiser until the feeling passes. Every quiet night since feels layered in threat. I can't stop replaying the severed hand, the way its fingers curved toward something unseen, as if reaching for me. I pass that stretch of County Road 12 every shift, eyes locked on the tree line, flashlight ready, hand on the holster with fingers twitching. And every time I swear I see movement, peripheral blurs that vanish when I shout. I file it under unconfirmed, but my heart knows the truth, that there's something still out there, watching, waiting. I keep driving the midnight miles, chasing calls that never feel routine again. Because once you've stared at a hand that came from someone real, you can never unsee it. Every shadow holds possibility, every silent radio crackle could carry a clue. And until I solve this, I'll keep looking, stepping into the darkness where nothing ever stays still long enough to be caught. I slide out of the station just past midnight, the slick streets reflecting the red and blue glow of my cruiser's lights like fractured stained glass. The air's heavy with moisture, a low humming tension that seems to vibrate through my bones. My name's Jacobs. 13 years on the force in Cumberland County, New Jersey, and I've learned to trust that uneasy tug in the pit of my gut. Tonight, it's screaming. I cruise down County Road 12 at 25, wipers thumping time against the windshield. Woods press in on either side, trees dark and silent, their branches drooping under the weight of last night's rain. My eyes drift to the taillights bouncing on the glass. Sudden, unnaturally bright. I grip the wheel tighter when I realize they're coming from the grass just off the shoulder, right where no sane driver would stop. I flip on the marquee lights, siren silent unless I need to call attention. The cruiser idles, engine purring with restrained power. I kill the motor 3 car lengths before the spot. Rain hisses on the hood. My chest tightens. Code 6, I think. Check an abandoned vehicle. Code 4, if it's nothing. But I know better than to guess. I tug the radio mic from the bracket. Dispatch, 1034, en route to suspicious vehicle on County Road 12. No plates, door open. My tone's flat, professional, but my voice quivers inside. I rest my eye against the scope of the spotlight and sweep across the grass. A white sedan sits half on the road, half on the crushed shoulder, one door swinging in the breeze like an invitation. No headlights, no hazard flashers, just that empty yawning hollow where a driver should be. I kill the lights and ease out, boots crunching on damp gravel. The beam from my tactical flashlight cuts a narrow cone ahead, tall grass flattened in a semicircle. The stain of mud on the car's side smears downward like someone slid off in a hurry. I approach the driver's side, hand hovering over my holster. I've learned the hard way not to jar a scene. Slow, steady movements. Training takes over. Breath in, breath out. Leaning low, I shine the light inside. Papers and receipts scattered. Personal items left behind. Then I spot it. Tissues and towels soaked in dark, sticky blood, matted into thick clumps on the floorboard. My stomach roils. I force a swallow, tighten my jaw. The only sound is rain sluicing through the car's open door. I step back, tapping the mic. Dispatch, I have visible blood inside. Requesting K9 and backup. CSI notified. I don't wait for a reply. My mind rewinds to the last time I saw blood like this, in an apartment where a domestic dispute turned fatal. That smell still haunts me, coppery stink, thick in the nostrils. Suddenly, a snap, twig underfoot, spins me toward the tree line. Branches droop low, droplets falling like cold fingers on my neck. I call out, "Come out, are you hurt?" My voice echoes, swallowed by the darkness. No answer. Static crackles in my ear from dispatch, distant, disembodied. The woods stand silent, impenetrable. I march to the rear of the car, crossing slick mud. My boots slip once. I nearly curse but keep my voice level. I circle around, scanning for footprints. none visible in the churned earth, only my own tracks trailing back to the road. Rain already filling the shallow depressions. I shine my light under the rear bumper, then on the passenger side door. The towels gestured toward earlier formed a trail leading to the back seat. I open the door, click of the latch sharp in the hush. My flashlight inches inside, a shape wrapped in paper towels. I feel the bile rising, tilt my head to steady. I slip on latex gloves and pull. Soft resistance yields to solid weight. I unwrap, chamber dust raining around my feet. Fingers, pale and curved, knuckles blackened where blood dried into lacquer. A wrist, severed sharp as a butcher's cut. Tendons and sinew glint red in the light. The hand's posture is frozen mid-grasp, as though clutching at something unseen. I swallow hard, stifle a retch. Focus. The scene is alive with questions. Who left this here? Why run into those woods? I tap the mic again. Dispatch. Suspected homicide. Evidence secured. K9 imminent. I tuck the hand into an evidence bag, careful to seal it airtight. Every movement feels too loud, too deliberate. I'm aware of 100 eyes waiting in the trees, watching my every flicker of light. Sirens break the silence. Backup arriving. Truck lights spin overhead, strobing through the rain like fractured lightning. I step aside as officers fan out. Flashlights dancing in all directions. The K9 unit lets the dog out. Axel sniffs the air, hackles rising. He lunges toward the woods, nose low, dragging the handler deeper into shadow. I wait, heart thundering, until Axel's leash goes slack. The dog paces, then returns. Nothing found. No scent trail, no drops of blood, no sign of footprints or broken branches beyond the initial snap I heard. We call for CSI. While they bag evidence, I stand watch. Flashlight sweeping the edge where asphalt meets mud, where grass meets forest, where reality blurs. Rain soaks through my jacket. Every drop feels like a countdown. My squad partner Rivera arrives with coffee, steaming cup grim gift in the cold. She eyes the sealed bag. "Holy shit," she breathes. Nodding, I hand it off. She covers the handbag in secondary evidence wrap. Her hands tremble as I saw mine did moments ago. Hours pass in the blur of report taking. By the time the tow truck hauls the sedan away, the sky lightens to pale gray edges. I sign off, boots heavy as I slide back into the driver's seat. The station recedes behind me. Fatigue weighs like iron. I drive home with no lights, deferring the shift's end. In the rearview mirror, I watch the empty road. No blinking brake lights, no figures disappearing into the trees. Just my own reflection, gaunt and unshaven, eyes shadowed by fatigue. That night, I don't sleep. Every minor sound, a creak in the floor, a distant car door, jerks me upright. I replay the scene, the hand's rigid curl, the foul odor, the sudden snap in the woods. I picture the fingerprints on the steering wheel, no matches, and the stolen VIN scratched clean. A stranger's lost appendage and no way to trace its owner. I lie in bed, muscles taut, imagining footsteps at the window, the beam of a flashlight cutting through curtains. I don't dare look. 2 nights later, the radio crackles. Silent alarm at the convenience mart on Highway 9. The doors had been locked for hours, lights dimmed. I respond, code 2. When I arrive, yellow lights flash through the rain. The door's glass panel shattered, tiny jagged shards gleaming like broken teeth. Inside, chip racks stand untouched, registers cold. I draw my weapon, slide inside, sweeping the aisles. The hum of the cooler is oddly comforting. I check the back exit. It's ajar. I push it open. Metal clanks. Water rushes in. Muddy cardboard lies trampled beneath foot. No footprints. No hint of the vandal's path. I radios it in. False alarm, damage to property, no sign. I sit in the cruiser for 20 minutes, listening to the rain gather on the roof. The chime of the register door never sounded. No human presence apart from mine. A chill digs into my spine. I start the engine, watch the flashing lights fade in the mirrors. The night resumes its quiet vigilance. Since then, the tension gnaws at me. I drive past County Road 12 each shift, lantern beam aimed at the tree line, but no car awaits. At home, I double lock the doors, check the windows. My wife asks why I've been distant. I lie, just shift fatigue. But I hear that hand gripping air, feel that woods breathe behind me. Patrol calls keep rolling. A suspicious jogger on the old trolley bridge. We find only a ghost, imprint on rotten boards. A silent 911 from a payphone buzzing with static. Nobody on the line. Each scene is a flicker of something half seen, half remembered. No suspects, no bodies, no closure. My nightmares stitch them together. A hand twitching in the moonlight. A face glimpsed beyond a shattered window pane. The echo of boots on mud. I pace my living room at 2 a.m., coffee cold in my hand. Spotlight shining on the walls in phantom arcs. I keep waiting for dispatch to call. 10:34, new lead on your case. But radio stays silent. I'm left with the questions. Who left the hand, and why? Who slipped into those woods? And will they ever let me find them, or will they hunt me first? The night stretches ahead, empty and unyielding. And I'll be out there again tomorrow, engine running, lights off, flashlight and holster ready. Because once you've stared into the dark and found it watching back, you can never unsee it. I pull onto the shoulder of County Road 12 again, the rain's pulse drumming through the open window like a warning. Dawn hasn't broken. The sky is a bruise-colored wash, promising more storms. I kill the engine, sit for a long beat in the hush, and then step out. Gravel scours my boots, and the weight of my holstered sidearm and flashlight feels like an anchor pinning me to this spot. The grass, once flattened in the shape of that white sedan, has stood back up, each blade slick with moisture. Yet in my mind I can still trace the arc it left behind, the yawning door, the bloodied towels, and that grasping severed hand. It's a brand on my memory, impossible to scrub clean. My flashlight beam cuts across the tree line, illuminating raindrops like tiny crystals, and then it rests on a dark knot in the woods. I freeze. Every fiber in me screams that someone, or something, watched me here before, retreated into the pines, and has been waiting. I call it in. Dispatch 1034 at previous suspicious vehicle location. Running a scan with the spotlight. The answer crackles back, distant, pro forma. I step closer to the tree line, flashlight sweeping over dark bark and tangled undergrowth. My breath fogs in the chill, my pulse thunders. I remember the twig snap, the fleeting shape of a coat sleeve, the voice too low to make out. I breathe in the scent of damp earth and pine and sweat-slicked adrenaline. Here, every sense sharpens. The faint rustle of leaves, a distant engine, the hum of static. I inch forward, light dancing over shapes that shift in peripheral vision until I'm chest-deep in underbrush. The beam catches on a scrap of white fabric snagged on a branch, stained faintly red. My stomach twists. Blood? Or just rust-colored bark? I reach out, fingers brushing the cloth. It's soft, like a torn shirt sleeve. I tug it free, hold it up, tiny threads of cotton smeared with something. I press the beam against it, wet, dark. I press gloved fingers in, pull out a smear. Test on my tongue. Number. I stow it in an evidence bag. I back out of the woods, careful not to disturb my tracks more than they already are, and cross back to the pavement. The station's lights are a distant beacon, my only promise of warmth and safety, but I can't leave until I know why that sleeve was here. I call CSI, need evidence tech for item recovered from tree line. The dispatcher says ETA 15. I wait, scanning for movement. In minutes, that swell to half an hour, I start to question everything. Was that fabric from the driver? From the person who ran or planted? And why run into the woods if you'd already dumped a hand by the car? When the evidence tech arrives, her flashlight stutters on my face before she nods and kneels in the mud. She photographs the spot, bags the cloth, catalogs coordinates. I stand by, jacket soaked, mind racing. She asks, "Anything else you want us to check?" I glance back toward the road, empty tarmac, unbroken rain. Then at the woods, uncharted dark. "No," I answer, "not yet." I return to the station as the sky lightens to a dull gray. I sit at my desk, coat still damp, and fill out supplemental reports. I jot, white cotton sleeve, possible mixed blood, in neat block letters, then pause, my pen hovering. I underline possible, because despite it all, I still hope there's a mundane answer, but deep down, I know there isn't. Later that afternoon, I keep replaying the fabric snag. Who wore that? Someone with a shirt shredded by bushes, fleeing in terror. That evening, I drive past the convenience store on Highway 9 again. The glass door is boarded up, new wood, splintered edges. A faded yellow sign warns of prosecution. I park across the street, sit in my cruiser, and watch the boards sway in the wind. I remember the register door that never chimed, the aisles that stood empty. I wonder who smashed that alarm panel and why. Was it the same person, linked to the hand, or a copycat testing my response? My radio crackles. Unrelated call, noise complaint 2 towns over. I press the button. 10-4. I'll check it out. I turn the key, engine hum, and drive away. But my mind stays behind, focused on broken glass and board-covered windows. I drive aimlessly, red and blue reflections dancing across every storefront. Brake lights, tail lights, nothing to chase. Every stop sign feels like an ambush. Late, I reach home. My wife is asleep. The hall light is low. I peel off my wet jacket and hang it by the door, each droplet thudding and quiet. In the bathroom mirror, I barely recognize the face looking back. Dark rings under eyes, jaw clenched. I splash cold water, but the reflection stays stubbornly the same. I brush my teeth mechanically, staring at my own eyes. Who are you becoming, I think? A man haunted. A cop chasing ghosts. I climb into bed and lay on my back, hand on the pillow like it's a lifeline. I force myself to breathe slow, count exhale. My thoughts spiral. The driver, whoever it was, ran into the woods and vanished. The hand, the tissues, the sleeve. Evidence strewn like breadcrumbs, but no trail, no suspect, no answers. At 3:13 a.m., my clock radio flickers to life. Emergency alert test. The beep echoes in the room, pulling me from the edge. My heart pounds. I sit up, listen to the test cycle through, then shut it off. The momentary adrenaline spike leaves me hollow. I lie back down, eyes open in darkness. Tomorrow night, I'll return to County Road 12. I'll walk that arc of grass again, flashlight in hand, breath measured. I'll scan the woods until my arms ache. I'll answer every call like it holds the next piece of the puzzle. I don't know why I can't let it go. Maybe because once you find blood this dark, you can't unsee it. Maybe because the unanswered questions burn brighter than any spotlight. I flick the visor light off as I pull onto County Road 12 for the 5th time. The road slick with another evening's rain. The skies a bruise purple in the half-light. The trees stand like dark sentinels along the shoulder. I settle into the driver's seat, posture rigid, and take a slow breath before killing the engine. My uniform is damp again, sleeves heavy with water, collar turned up against the chill. The spotlight rests on the tree line, a steady beam that cuts through falling drops. It's been weeks, but the unease feels fresh, like the first night I found that hand. I slip out of the cruiser, flashlight in one hand, radio mic clipped to my vest. Gravel crunches crisply under each step. The flattened arc where that white sedan once sat has vanished. Grass stands upright, unbroken. But I know the shape by heart, the broken curve of the driver's door, the path into the woods where no footprints led. I raise the beam to the car's old resting place. Wet earth reflects back a sheen of rain. My boots sink slightly in the mud. I catch my reflection in the puddle, dark eyes under a furrowed brow, eyes that keep waiting. I sweep the beam across the forest edge. Shadow after shadow glides at the periphery. I call into the mic in a low, steady voice. 10:34 on site again. Running another sweep, no plates, no vehicle present. The dispatcher's crackle is distant. I don't expect much. Tonight, I'm alone. I step toward the tree line, flashlight whipping side to side. Broken branches, fallen leaves, tangled undergrowth. The same obstacles that swallowed the driver weeks ago. I crouch down and probe the mud with my gloved fingers. The earth is soft, but there are no tracks, no sign of anything dragged in or out. It's as if boots never met this spot. A shiver runs up my spine. I stand and examine a broken twig jutting into the path. It's smeared with a dark smear, fresh blood. My breath catches. I kneel, press a gloved fingertip, viscous, warm. My mind reels. I clear my throat before calling it in. Dispatch, possible fresh blood at the tree line, requesting EMR and backup. Evidence tech? Yes, I need markers. Within 20 minutes, a marked cruiser rolls up, lights cutting through the gloom, then another, then an unmarked forensic van. I guide them to the spot. The evidence tech chips colored flags into the ground around the smear, photographs it from every angle. Forensics help bag the sample on a sterile swab. I watch, jaw clenched, as they work. Each plant, each blade of grass is scrutinized, each a potential clue. I keep scanning the woods, convinced I'll catch movement, but the trees stand still. After they finish, I take one last look at those flags, tiny dots of color against dark earth, and ease back to the cruiser. I sit in the driver's seat for a long moment, engine off, heartbeat loud in my ears. The rain drums steadily on the roof. Everything feels electric, like the storm is about to break open a secret. I head toward home, but halfway there, my radio crackles. Dispatch to 1034. Suspicious person reported at the old trolley overpass. My pulse stutters. I flip on the blues and reds, accelerate, and follow the detour signs. The trolley overpass is a crumbling relic, rusted, rails stretching over a dried creek bed. Local kids dare each other to brave it. Drunks piss off the edge on weekends. I park below and climb the steep embankment, flashlight bobbing in the dark. Up top, the planks are rotten, gaps where wood has splintered away. My beam finds two shapes huddled near the center, silhouettes draped in soaked hoodies. They don't move when I clear my throat. I call out, "Police! Show your hands!" The taller one tenses but stays silent. I move closer, badge out, heart in my throat. Rain rolls off my hat brim. Wood creaks under my feet. I spot a small package beside them, wrapped in plastic. My blood runs cold. They didn't scatter calls or run. They sat there, waiting. I handcuff them side by side. Their eyes are wide, unblinking. I pat each down, no weapons, just cell phones and cash. The package is heavy. My glove rings against it when I pick it up. I pry open the plastic. Inside, a single smooth rock stained deep red. No explanation, no note. I stare at it, then at the pair. Their mouths are dry, trembling. I press the rock to my flashlight beam. Crimson rivulets gleam even in the dim light. I slide it into an evidence bag. Dispatch 1034. 2 in custody for trespassing. Evidence collected. Package at location, requesting patrol units for transport. They read me status. I loop the overpass for tire tracks. No prints, but skid marks where someone accelerated away. I cuff the suspects into the back seat of my cruiser. Their wet forms slump in the seat, faces ashen. I drive them to the station. Lights off, siren silent. At booking, they refuse to talk beyond a whisper. Hand off, they say. We saw the send? I jot notes, heart thumping at the phrasing. Send? Like part of a bigger network? I run their names through the system. Nothing. No criminal history. I lock them in cells and bag the rock. Homicide is notified again. Hours later, I'm back behind my desk, soaked coat drying on a rack. I pull the rock from the evidence locker, turn it in my palm. It's oddly smooth, shaped like a palm, almost too deliberate, stained dark. I swab a corner for prints, none found. I journal. Rock, red-stained, origin unknown. Suspects claim saw the send, no explanation. Investigate possible local gang signal, suspects uncooperative. I stare at the line, then delete gang signal. Too vague. I replace with unknown ledger. Better. Evidence, cryptic reference to send. By the time I leave, 8 hours have passed since I climbed that embankment. The sky is streaked with early dawn. I drag fatigue like a weight. My bones ache from patrolling and running up hills. I drive home in near silence, radio off. The hand, the sleeve, the rock, leaving fragments that don't fit together. Each new piece only deepens the tangle. At home, I peel off my boots and head to the shower. The hot water stings when it hits the handprint bruises on my wrist from the cuffs. I scrub at the red stain on my gloves, wash at my face until the mirror fogs. A new voicemail blinks on my phone. Lab results. I step out, towel around my waist, and play it. It's terse. Blood sample inconclusive. Further testing required. I slam the phone down. I lie in bed before my wife wakes. Rain patters on the roof. My chest tightens and sleep feels impossible. There's nowhere safe from this. I close my eyes, clench my fists on the sheets. Outside, the storm rages, thunder rolling. The questions swirl. Who left the blood? Who wrapped the hand? Who sent the rock? And what did it all mean? No answers, only that gathering dread, heavier than any evidence bag, pressing down as I wait for the next call. I cut through the last stretch of Main Street on my way to the precinct, rain spitting against the windshield like tiny bullets. The neon glow of closed storefronts flickers in the wiper's arc, shedding brief floods of color onto the dashboard. My knuckles are white from gripping the wheel. My uniform clings to my skin beneath the raincoat I left half unbuttoned in my hurry. I replay the past weeks in a loop. The blood-soaked tissues, the severed hand frozen in its own panic, the torn sleeve snagged on a branch, the cryptic rock discovered atop the trolley, and now 2 silent figures who spoke only of the send. Each new piece sears a line in my gut, a map without a destination. I pull into the lot at 3:17 and kill the engine. The lot is empty, but for my cruiser, and the station's dark silhouette looms ahead, windows shuttered against the storm. I step onto the pavement, water sloshing through my boots, and duck under the awning. The humid air smells of ozone and coffee from the break room. Taurus is there, eyes bloodshot, nursing a cup. She nods once. Long night? You have no idea, I mutter. I rinse mud from my gloves in the utility sink and then join her at the table. I lay out the evidence. Plastic bags with swabs, paper folders bulging with reports. The battered rock sealed in a hard case. Torres stares at the collection. What are we dealing with? I shake my head. I don't know. Whoever did this, they're sending messages. It's like they want me to follow the breadcrumbs. She pours us both coffee. Ever think it's a sick game? I stare at the rock. Yeah, and I'm playing. We sit in silence until dispatch crackles with a call. 1034, possible break-in at 221 Maple Drive. Resident reports noises, no visual, advise code 2. I finish my coffee in 2 swallows. Let's roll. We head upstairs to gear up. Vest, radio, flashlight. I grab my cruiser keys. As we exit, I glance back at the evidence locker, sealed tight. But my mind is already abandoning it for whatever's at Maple Drive. The rain has led up to a mist of fine droplets. We drive through skeletal trees lining Emerald Avenue until we reach a row of single-floor ranch houses, lights out aside from one with a flickering porch lamp. The address matches, 221 Maple. The lamp pulses in the gloom. I park out front, cut the lights, and we slip onto the lawn. The air is thick with the smell of a damp mulch and rotting leaves. I whisper to Torres, "Stay close." We approach the front door. It's ajar. A subtle scratch mark gouges the painted wood, splintered fibers catching the glow from my flashlight. My heart thuds. I draw my gun and kick the door gently. Inside, the hallway is lit by moonlight streaming through a broken window at the far end. Furniture overturned. A coffee table on its side, cushions torn open. The carpet is matted with mud and, worse, rust-colored streaks. I advance, radio clipped tight. Dispatch, 1034 inside 221 Maple. Possible burglary, no visual on suspect. My boots scuff the carpet. I sweep left down a hallway. A bedroom door stands open. I cross the threshold and freeze. On the bed, someone's written in what looks like blood, centuries-old cursive, "See me." Lettering so fluid it suggests calm deliberation, not panic or frenzy. My skin pricks. Torres's voice is flat in my ear. "Jacobs, you okay?" "It's someone left a message." I drop to one knee, train my flashlight on the words. Each letter is slick, dark, the sheen still wet. I swallow. The bed's mattress is stained, too. I glance around. The closet door is swinging. The floor inside has footprints trailing toward the back wall. I rise, careful not to touch the script, and approach. There's a closet-sized space inside, bare, except for a wooden box on the floor. I shine my light in. The box lid is open. I step back. "Torres, we have a package." She joins me, gun ready. I turn the box toward the light. Inside is a faded photograph, edges curled. 2 children in a suburban yard, smiles half faded, faces smudged with red. I lean forward, heart hammering, as a name is scrawled on the back. Marie Donovan. The same Donovan who reported her car stolen last month, or someone with that name. My pulse spikes. I close the box, bag it in evidence. Let's get out of here. We back through the house, careful not to disturb Prince. Outside, the cold night air hits me like a slap. I pause on the porch. Behind me, the "See me" message pulses in my mind. An invitation or a dare. I radio dispatch. Residential break-in, evidence collected. Notify homicide. I climb into the cruiser, hands trembling. Torres slides in beside me. I start the engine, lights still off, and we peel away in silence. Back at the station, the evidence piles up. The sleeve, the hand, the rock, the swab from the tree, and now this photograph. My desk groans under the weight. I hammer at the keyboard. Donovan, Marie A., D.O.B., address. The system pulls up a middle-aged waitress with no known relatives. I cross-reference her address. No signs of violence reported there. The photograph is dated 1987 by the fashion. The children are long grown now. Why send me this? My radio crackles. It's the lab. Jacobs, swab sample from County Road 12 returns positive for human blood, type O but degraded. CMS match inconclusive. I press the button. Copy that. My stomach twists. The blood tells no story. The photograph tells no story. The messages, towels, hand, sleeve, rock, script, are fragments of a story I can't piece together. Each is personal, ritualistic, and constructed to draw me deeper. I lock the evidence in the vault and look at Torres. We're running out of time. She nods wearily. They're taunting you. Feels more than that, I admit. Feels like confession. I rub my eyes. Tomorrow, I want a full background on Marie Donovan and check cold cases for missing relatives matching those kids in the photo. She writes it down. I stand and stretch. The station is quiet now. Officers gone home or on other calls. I head back outside. The rain has stopped. The lot is empty beneath an indifferent moon. I stand in the halo of the porch light, wind tugging at my coat, and consider the night's unraveling threads. Somewhere, someone orchestrates a narrative of violence and silence, and I'm both protagonist and audience, forced to participate, never to understand fully. I drive home before sunrise. In bed, I stare at the ceiling, mind racing with blood and photos and cryptic commands. I know rest won't come. Not tonight, not for a long time. I count breaths, try to steady, but the words pulse behind my eyelids. See me. See me. The last echo rings, unresolved, as sleep finally finds me, but only as half dream, half reverie. Just before dawn, I jerk awake, wringing wet with sweat. My heart pounds. In the pitch dark, I reach beside the bed for my gun, but it's not there. I inhale sharply. My holster is empty, gun still at the station. Panic throttles, and I fight the urge to bolt upright. The whisper of curtains stirs as a wind gust lifts the window. Light breeze, I tell myself. But in the faint glow, I'm certain I see a shape at the window's edge. A dark silhouette, silent, still, watching. I stare, breath held, until the silhouette fades, dissolving into the charged air. I remain frozen, mind racing with what-ifs. Then, in the throb of my pulse, I hear it. A soft click, like a latch releasing. My gaze snaps to the closet door. It stands ajar. I hadn't noticed it before, but there it is, the same crawlspace closet in my own bedroom. Door cracked open just enough to reveal utter blackness. My blood runs cold. I swallow, tongue dry. Every light in my mind flickers. The messages, the hand, the sleeve, the rock, now this. They're here. They never left.